Chapter 1951, The Origin of Chaos. 1. Seeing this man appear in front of them alive and well, Lu Feng and the others could not compare him to the great demon who had rampaged through the divine world nearly 1,000,000 years ago. However, his evil deeds were well known, so they could only sigh. One cannot judge a book by its cover, and the sea cannot be measured. However, this person was a great enemy to them. More importantly, they didn't know why these people had come, so they were in a passive position for a while. Uncle Long. What should we do? Lu Feng and the rest all stared at Uncle Long, hoping that he would have a good idea. After all, that person was not someone the one family head and the other two could compare to. Let's just wait and see. Uncle Long thought for a while. Looking at the situation, these people wouldn't be able to break in for a while. The truth was just as Uncle Long had expected. The people outside the door tried everything they could and even used all their strength, but they still couldn't break through the defense of the house. For a moment, the people who were originally confident were in a dilemma. Big brother. We can't continue like this. The one who spoke was a middle-aged man with dark skin. He was the most powerful person besides the man in the lead. Moreover, he was a reverent god. Calm down. If we can't break it in a day, I don't believe that we can't break through the defense of this house in a month, or even a year. All of you, work harder. Well, take turns to attack this house. The young man in the lead ordered. Yes. The man's men quickly responded loudly. Then, everyone consciously divided into groups and took turns to attack the Leng family's main residence. Just like that, these people attacked the Leng family's main residence day and night. Meanwhile, Uncle Long and the others in the main residence had become calmer and calmer from their initial worry. Uncle Long would often lock himself in his room and stay there for an entire day. In fact, he did not really stay in his room. Instead, he was discussing countermeasures with Qing Ju and the others in the bracelet. At that moment, in the Bengal space, other than Uncle Long and Green Vessel, almost all the beasts were gathered in front of the light screen. Seeing that their house was being attacked repeatedly, Baby and the other beasts were so angry that they wanted to rush out of the house and tear those people into pieces. However, Uncle Long would not allow them to be so impulsive. Uncle Long. It looks like they won't stop until they break into this house. An old phoenix said helplessly when it saw the divine skills dancing wildly on the light screen. Yup. I don't know how long this little girl's defensive formation can last. Uncle Long sighed. Recently, he had clearly felt that the defense of the house had weakened a little. With the power of Elder Sister's array, it won't be a problem to hold on for a few years, but I'm afraid that they have people who are proficient in array techniques. In that case, I'm afraid it won't be long before they attack. Looking at the situation on the screen, Qing Ju calmly analyzed. Should we inform the little girl? The old phoenix said with some uncertainty. I wanted to inform my sister, but that detestable fellow cut off my connection with my sister. Therefore, we can only save ourselves. Qing Ju's pretty little face was full of depression, and his resentful eyebrows were twisted together. In fact, even if these people attacked, he was not afraid. This was because once the other party broke through the defense of the house, he could immediately move the Great Elder and the others into the bracelet. In that case, no one would be able to find them. But if that was the case, they would be too embarrassed. One had to know that when he was at his peak, not to mention one Heaven Breaker, even 10 Heaven Breaker experts would not dare to be arrogant in front of him. Patian was the name that the great demon had given himself. From the name alone, one could tell how insolent this person was. Humph. Do you want to pierce the heavens? We'll have to see if he has the ability. Qing Ju scoffed and thought to himself. Save myself? It's a pity that we haven't fully recovered to our peak strength. Otherwise, we wouldn't have allowed that guy to be so arrogant if we joined hands. Feng Zhan said in a low voice, his face full of resentment. You can't attack. Uncle Long said hesitantly. Once these old phoenixes made their move, they would definitely attract the attention of the Phoenix clan. Now was not the time yet. Then what do we do? Feng Zhan was frustrated. He knew what Uncle Long was like, but he couldn't just stand by and watch that guy show off in front of them. With me and Qing Ju around, you guys don't have to worry too much. Uncle Long consoled. And me. There's still us. Seeing that Uncle Long didn't mention them, Baby and the other beasts hurriedly said. They were also very strong in combat, so they couldn't be ignored by Uncle Long. Right. There's still treasure in these little beasts, so it's not your turn to make a move. Actually, there was one more thing that Uncle Long didn't say. These little beasts had a lot of frightening medicinal pills in their hands. Therefore, they still had a great advantage. At least they could choose to sneak attack. This was a well-tested method. Yes, yes. Baby and the other beasts nodded their little heads in agreement. Then, they all stared at Uncle Long eagerly, waiting for his order. However, Uncle Long didn't plan to fight back now. He was waiting. Waiting for the best opportunity. If the people outside were to fail to take down the enemy after a long time, they would definitely fly into a rage out of humiliation. That would be the best time for them to counterattack. After making up their minds, Uncle Long and the other beasts lived a very comfortable life. Meanwhile, Patian and the others, who had been staying outside the house, felt more and more depressed. Among the people Patian had brought, the weakest was a divine emperor. As a result, it could be said that this was an extremely powerful group. When he had come, he had also thought that it would be very easy to save the people he wanted to save, but who knew that they would be trapped here for several months? What's more, based on the current situation, they would continue to guard outside their doors endlessly. And he knew that among these subordinates, there were already quite a few who were fickle-minded. This was definitely not a good sign for them. However, he was powerless in the face of the current situation. What was even more infuriating was that the people in the house knew that they were waiting outside, but they still made delicious food to tempt them every day. Every time it was mealtime, the fragrance of the food would spread throughout the entire land of demons. The fragrance was extremely alluring. Even old men like them who had not eaten for many years could not help but drool when they smelled it. From this, it could be seen how despicable the person in the room was. Some of his subordinates were hungry and wanted to hunt for prey in the land of demons to satisfy their cravings, but who knew that the beasts in the land of demons seemed to have disappeared overnight? Not to mention the beasts, not even a single hair could be found. This fact ignited a monstrous flame of anger in their hearts and made them have the urge to kill. Unfortunately, they couldn't find a target to vent their anger on. Therefore, they could only vent their anger on the defensive array of the house. Therefore, they guarded outside the Leng family's main house for a certain period of time, and their work efficiency was surprisingly high, but the array was still not too damaged. This fact also made many people want to vomit blood. Chapter 1952, The Origin of Chaos, 2. In fact, the reason why these people couldn't find any beasts to eat in the land of demons was that after they came here, the beasts in the land of demons temporarily moved away. A considerable number of them went to the Ning family's divine realm, one to send a message to the master of the Ning family, another to seek protection from the master of the Ning family, while the other beasts went to the endless ocean according to Uncle Long's voice transmission. However, before they left, they had already swept through the evil demon's land without the attention of Patian and the others. Anything that could be eaten or taken away had been taken away by them. In the words of a certain beast, they absolutely would not leave any meat residue for these outsiders. As a result, it was naturally not easy for Puotian's subordinates to find something to eat. And they were still suffering every day. Big brother. Tu Liang is here. Outside the house, the dark-skinned man walked up to Patian, who was frowning in thought, and whispered. Yes, let him try to break the array. Patian said indifferently, but there was no trace of surprise in his voice. The dark-skinned man was confused. When Big Brother heard that Tu Liang was here, why was his reaction so calm? One should know that when he knew that Tu Liang had arrived, he was so excited that he almost jumped. Big Brother. With Tu Liang, we'll soon be able to break this formation and save the Wen family head. What else do you have to worry about? The dark-skinned man asked tentatively. Among them, Tu Liang's formation skills were the highest. In his opinion, if Tu Liang dared to claim the second place in the divine world, no one would dare to claim that they were the first. Of course, this was with the exception of the fallen Lord Yu. The defensive formation of this house is not simple. I'm afraid that even Tu Liang doesn't have absolute confidence in breaking this formation. Patian expressed his concern. Although his attainments in formations weren't as good as Tu Liang's, he knew very well that this formation was no small matter. Arg! This formation is so powerful. The dark-skinned man was shocked. No wonder they couldn't break the array even after attacking for so long. The Great Heaven Guard formation. Suddenly, an unbelievable surprise came from behind the two. You really do recognize this formation? Patian turned his head and said indifferently. He only felt that this formation was somewhat familiar, but he didn't dare to confirm whether it was the one he was thinking of. Now, Tu Liang had given him the answer. Yes, this is the legendary Great Sky Guarding formation. I really didn't think that I would see such a top-tier defensive formation in this small place. Tu Liang's face was full of shock and infatuation. He was an array fanatic and would be mesmerized and unable to extricate himself when he saw a top-notch array. Thus, when he saw this legendary top-notch array, he immediately went crazy. Looking at the silently operating defensive array that was invisible to the naked eye and emitting endless power, his heart was burning. He wanted to rush into the house immediately and ask the person who set up this array for advice. Unfortunately, the two sides were enemies. This fact made Tu Liang very conflicted. In the divine realm, those who were proficient in formations were usually called formation masters. However, there were fewer and fewer people in the divine realm who were proficient in formations. Thus, the status of a rare profession like a formation master had gradually risen. If a formation master also knew how to refine artifacts, then his status could definitely rise to a height that ordinary artifact masters could not compare to. After all, not all artifact masters were proficient in formations. And Tu Liang was a dual profession talent who was proficient in both formations and refining. However, whether it was an array master or a tool master, they were both professions that consumed a lot of resources. Therefore, it was difficult for small and medium-sized clans to support this kind of talent. Although Tu Liang was born in a small clan, the clan he belonged to was a subsidiary clan of the Yao family. Therefore, he could be considered to have been nurtured by the Yao family with all their might. As for why he was mixed with Patian and the others, it was a long story. Tu Liang had once been depressed. In order to make a name for himself, he had done a lot of things against his conscience and offended many enemies. Once, when he was being hunted down, he almost lost his life. It was by chance that he was saved by Patian. Therefore, from then on, he had been following Potion's side, almost at his beck and call, mainly to repay his kindness. However, his relationship with Patian couldn't be exposed, and his identity on the surface was the Yao family's dedicated blacksmith. This time, it was also Patian who had sent him a voice transmission, asking him to come and break the formation. That was why he had appeared here. Before he had come, Patian had told him that the formation he was going to break was extraordinary. At that time, he had suspected that Potion's words were exaggerated, but now that he had seen it with his own eyes, he knew that not only was Patian not exaggerating, but he had even been a little conservative. This formation was far more than extraordinary. This was the top-grade defensive formation in the divine realm. However, this formation should have been lost long ago after Master Ye's death. How could it appear in this small place? He could not understand. In order to make sure that he was not mistaken, he carefully observed this seemingly unremarkable but infinitely powerful defensive formation several times. In the end, he could finally confirm that this was indeed the legendary Great Sky Guarding formation. Furthermore, it was the complete version of the Great Sky Guarding formation. In fact, all the defensive formations in the divine realm were basically derived from the Sky Guarding formation. Those formations had only learned the surface of the Sky Guarding formation. As for the essence of the sky-guarding formation, they had not grasped it at all. However, the complete version of the sky-guarding formation in front of him had allowed him to witness the supreme power of the legendary sky-guarding formation. At this moment, his excitement could not be described with words. In the legends, the sky-guarding formation was made up of 999 great formations and 99,999 small formations. Furthermore, most of them were formations within formations, eyes within eyes. The truth and falsehood within them were dazzling and indiscernible. Not only that, but breaking this formation was not something that could be done in a day. Thinking of this, he made preparations for a long battle. After casually finding a place to sit, he began to focus on studying the defensive array in front of him. Seeing this, Patian and the others tactfully didn't disturb him. At the same time, they stopped attacking the formation in front of them so that they wouldn't hinder Tu Liang. At first, Tu Liang only took out an ancient book that had already turned yellow. After flipping through it for a long time, he began to stare at the defensive formation. After Patian and the others stopped attacking the Leng family's main residence, the first elder and the others in the main residence also heaved a sigh of relief. However, Qing Ju's heart was in his throat. Through the light screen, Qing Ju stared at the man with a delicate and pretty appearance sitting in front of the formation. From his conversation with Patian, Qing Ju knew that this man was proficient in formation techniques. As for how proficient he was in it, he was just amazing. However, he was very confident in the array that Leng Ruoxue had set up. Even though the defensive array that his sister had set up was limited by her strength and could not unleash the full power of the great sky-guarding array, it was not an easy task to undo the array that his sister had set up. If they could drag this out for a few years and wait for his sister to come out of seclusion, it would be easier for them to deal with these people. After all, in his eyes, his sister was omnipotent. Chapter 1953, The Origin of Chaos, 3. In addition, once his sister had successfully advanced, he would naturally be able to undo another layer of the seal. At that time, he would be able to recover at least 80% of his strength. At that time, even if Patian's strength was stronger than before, he and Uncle Long would be enough to deal with Patian together. Therefore, he had to be patient and buy enough time for his sister. As he thought of this, Qing Ju slowly calmed down. He was an extraordinary weapon spirit, so how could he be flustered? Little Black. Let's go and farm. Qing Ju suddenly called the little black dog over and said. The beasts in the Bengal were all speechless when they saw Qing Ju's thoughts. However, the little black dog, which had been out of favor for a long time, jumped up and down excitedly when it heard Qing Ju's words. It did not know what worries were, but as long as it had the land and Qing Ju to play with it, it was already extremely happy. Looking at the little black dog's carefree appearance, Baby was so angry that he gritted his teeth. If he wasn't afraid that this puppy would tell on him, he really wanted to teach that stupid dog a good lesson. In fact, the main thing was that it couldn't understand. They were clearly two artifact spirits, so why did they both have a special liking for farming? Was this normal? Seeing that his baby was about to explode, Feng Zhan, who was lying not too far away, consoled it with a concerned look on his face. Baby, calm down. I can't stay calm. Old phoenix, tigers and wolves are everywhere outside. Are we just going to keep hiding in the space like this? Baby was a little depressed. It really wanted to go out and meet those guys. It wanted to let those people know that they were not to be trifled with. I wanted to go out and fight with those people, but Uncle Long didn't allow it. Moreover, it's not easy for us to appear in the divine realm with our current identities. Feng Zhan sighed, feeling depressed as well. AI. The baby drooped its little head, and its aura instantly became low. Right now, it really missed its lovely master. If Master was here, they definitely wouldn't hide in the space. Unfortunately, Master was in seclusion and couldn't hear its inner thoughts at all. 3 days later. Tu Liang, who had been studying the great sky-guarding formation, suddenly stood up from the ground. His sudden movement startled Patian and the others. However, seeing that he had finally moved, everyone dared to speak to him. Otherwise, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly, afraid of disturbing him. Tu Liang, do you have any solution? Padian asked in a carefree manner. Although he looked very calm on the surface, his heart was already in his throat. There is no other way. It's impossible to break this array in a short time. Fortunately, the person who set this array didn't have a high cultivation level. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to break this array at all. However, I'm not absolutely sure. I can only say that I'll try my best. Tu Liang told the truth, but at the same time, he was quite depressed. The person who set up the formation was already able to set up the Great Sky Guarding Formation with his current cultivation. Once the other party became a divine emperor or hierarch, the formation he set up would be invincible in the divinity. Although he was a little envious, jealous, and hateful, he wanted to meet the person who set up the array. It would be best if he could ask for advice from him. However, looking at Patian and the others' posture, his idea was likely to be difficult to achieve. AI. Tu Liang sighed in his heart. In fact, he was only interested in the formation. He didn't want to get involved in the feud between Patian and the other party. However, he had to get involved. However, for the sake of the formation, he could plead with Patian on behalf of the people in the house. He believed that Patian would give him face. But the prerequisite was that he had to break this great formation first. Otherwise, everything would just be empty talk. Just try your best. Patian said with a nod. He was very clear about the power of this formation. Therefore, even if Tu Liang couldn't break this formation, he wouldn't blame Tu Liang. However, if he did that, he would have to stay here even longer. Tu Liang nodded slightly. Then, he focused on studying the sky guarding formation. Tu Liang's mind went blank for a moment as he looked at the interlocking formations on the array. After he returned to normal, he had a headache. Any formation master would have a headache when they saw this inextricably linked formation. Moreover, for ordinary arrays, as long as the array I was found, the array could basically be cracked. However, there was more than one array I in this great sky guarding array. According to the ancient records, there were at least 10,000 formation eyes of different sizes in the Great Sky Guarding Formation, and some even had hundreds of thousands of them. It was easy to imagine how big the project of unlocking this formation was. If it were any other array master, not to mention trying to break the Great Sky Guarding Array, they would probably be scared away just by thinking about it, because this was really beyond the reach of human strength. Just like that, Tu Liang, who had an indomitable spirit, continued his long-prepared work of breaking the Great Sky Guarding Formation. Time passed. Very quickly, half a year had passed. During this time, the first elder and the others in the house became calmer and calmer. As for Puotian and the others outside the house, although they also looked calm, in fact, their hearts had been very depressed. This kind of emotion had accumulated more and more in the past 6 months, almost to the point of saturation. Now, they were numb to Tu Liang telling them from time to time that he had solved a few more small formations. Tu Liang had solved less than 5% of the big formation. As for Tu Liang, he was still trying to break the sky guarding formation. However, as his face became paler by the day, Puotian and the others knew that Tu Liang's spiritual power was on the verge of collapse. This fact forced Patian to force Tu Liang to rest. However, Tu Liang, who had just recovered a little of his spiritual power, immediately immersed himself in the array that made him intoxicated. At the same time, Leng Ruoxue, who was in closed-door cultivation in the dream dust space, was in an abnormal state. The evildoer who was by her side started to worry when he saw Shuai'er's beautiful brows locked together and her face turning pale. All of a sudden, the spiritual qi in the secret chamber that they were in started to gather towards Leng Ruoxue and rushed into her body. The demon knew that Shuai'er was about to break through. In his joy, he placed his hand on Shuai'er's back, wanting to help her. However, he was stopped by a hand that was stretched out in front of him. "Why are you stopping me? Can't you see that there's not enough spiritual qi here for Shuai'er to absorb?" The demon's face was black as he looked at Huan Chen, who was blocking his way, and said with a slight displeasure. I know. That's why I'm prepared. After Huan Chen finished speaking, he took out a milky white ball with a mysterious look. The ball was translucent and thin. It was filled with spiritual energy, and it looked like it had already liquefied. What is this? The demon's expression changed when he saw the viscous liquid in the ball. He was too familiar with this aura. It was clearly. This is Master's source energy. Master left it for her. Huan Chen looked at Leng Ruoxue with a tinge of sadness. However, he quickly returned to normal. The master he was referring to was naturally his previous master, the master of the God world, Lord Yu. Master's origin was the purest energy in the universe. It was also known as the origin of chaos. It was the mother that gave birth to Master when the world was first created. At the same time, these origin of chaos also represented the identity of the Master. Only the Master who possessed the origin of chaos was the Master of the divine world recognized by the laws of the world. The reason why the current God Lord of the divine world was so nervous about him was that he suspected that his Master's origin was in his hands. Otherwise, he would not have tolerated his provocation and disregard. In fact, that woman had guessed it right. Unfortunately, he could not give his master's origin of chaos to that woman, even if he died. He was here, and the origin of chaos was here. When he died, the origin of chaos would return to the world. This was Master Ye's last wish before he died. Shuai, I'm afraid we can't refine it now. The demon looked at the translucent ball in Huan Chen's hand and asked worriedly. In order to completely refine this origin of chaos, apart from the chaotic body, the refiner must also have the strength of a reverent god level. Shuai's current strength simply did not meet the requirements. More importantly, he was afraid that Shuai would not be able to withstand the overbearing energy of the origin of chaos. This was what he was most worried about. Ha ha ha. Since I dare to take out the origin of chaos, I naturally have enough confidence. Why are you so nervous? Are you afraid of your identity being exposed? Huan Chen teased with a faint smile. I'm not afraid. The demon gritted his teeth in anger. Damn it, why are these people all the same? In fact, he had wanted to tell Shuai about his identity for a long time, but he had never found the right opportunity. In addition, Shuai's strength was still very low, and he did not want her to feel too much pressure, so he had not said it. Now, his identity had become the object of these people's ridicule. Since that's the case, you don't have to worry. Although the origin of chaos seems very tyrannical, as long as it acknowledges me as its master, not only will it not harm Little Master, but it will also bring great benefits to Little Master. You know what I mean. Huan Chen revealed a smile that was asking for a beating and said calmly. Chapter 1954, Poor Baby, 1, Besides, with you here, do you think you can't protect me, your little master? Huan Chen added with a faint smile. Then I'll give the origin of chaos to Shuai now. With him protecting Shuai, there would not be any major accidents when Shuai refined the origin of chaos. However, she would inevitably suffer. After all, Shuai's strength was too low at the moment. It was impossible for her to completely withstand the overbearing energy of the origin of chaos. However, if Shuai could obtain the recognition of the origin of chaos, it would definitely be of great benefit to her future cultivation. Shuai's current cultivation speed was already freakish. With the help of the origin of chaos, she believed that it would not take long for her to become a reverent god-level expert. Once Shuai became a reverent god-level expert, her strength would naturally be incomparable to ordinary reverent god-level experts. At that time, Shuai would have even more capital to face that woman. With his help, it would only be a matter of time before they eliminated those traitors. However, he was also very clear that Shuai still had a long way to go to become a true expert. He would always accompany Shuai as she grew up, until the end of time. Huan Chen smiled in satisfaction when he saw that the demon had agreed. Then, he tossed the origin of chaos into the air. Instantly, the originally quiet origin of chaos glowed brightly. After spinning a few rounds in the air, it flew towards Leng Ruoxue. When it reached Leng Ruoxue's side, the light from the origin of chaos became even more dazzling. In an instant, Leng Ruoxue was completely enveloped by the dazzling light. Following that, the origin of chaos entered Leng Ruoxue's body. The two men present knew that this was only the beginning. However, the origin of chaos did not resist entering Leng Ruoxue's body. This already indicated that the origin of chaos had given her its initial approval. This was definitely a good start. Next, whether the refinement would succeed or not would be decided by time. Ever since the origin of chaos had entered Leng Ruoxue's body, the demon had been staring at her nervously without blinking. He was afraid that Shuer would feel any discomfort. However, what made him feel conflicted was that Shuer could only rely on herself now. Unless Shuer's life was in danger, he could not help her. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but sigh. When Huanqin saw this, he patted evildoer's shoulder and said, "You should have faith in me, the young master. The origin of chaos will definitely acknowledge her." At least, he was very confident. "You don't need to say that. I'm just worried about the pain she's going to suffer." Hearing this, the demon glared at Huanqin and said with a slight displeasure, "Isn't this just a matter of time? I think you should have been mentally prepared." Huanqin said matter-of-factly, "Get lost. I don't want to see you." Huanqin's words made the demon fly into a rage out of embarrassment. Damn this guy, how is this the same as being mentally prepared? If Shuer wasn't the one he loved, would he be so nervous? As the saying goes, the more concerned you are, the more confused you will be. Therefore, even if Shuer were to suffer a little, his heart would ache. But this guy actually said it so easily, it was really infuriating. If he wasn't afraid of disturbing Shuer, he would have dragged this fellow out and given him a good beating. He really needed a beating. "I'll get lost, alright? I won't disturb you two anymore. You take good care of my little master." Ha ha ha. Huanqin saw that the evildoer was a little annoyed and naturally had to tactfully leave. Otherwise, if this man wanted to beat him up, he would really be at a loss. Sigh. It was his fault for not being able to beat them. He had to admit the difference in strength. With that, Huanqin disappeared. Seeing that Huanqin had left, the demon immediately calmed down. He found a spot closest to Shuer and sat down cross-legged without disturbing her. However, his eyes were fixed on her, and he was even prepared to help her at any time. After Huanqin left, he turned around and entered another sealed room. In the room, a small black beast was lying on the ground with tears in its eyes, gnawing at a small mountain of crystals of various colors. From the spiritual chi that the crystals emitted, one could tell at a glance that they were all top-grade crystals, and this little beast was the baby. Baby was gnawing on Jingshi while secretly hating in her heart. That hateful guy actually dared to treat it like this, woo. It's really too hateful, when can I finish eating all these hard stones? In fact, it had been eating for a long time, but the crystals did not seem to decrease at all, and it was getting more and more depressed. It knew that the guy was definitely messing with it, because these crystals only needed to be absorbed, but that man actually ordered it to eat all of them, or he would beat it up, and even said that they were its favorite food. Humph. How could it like to eat stones? This was nonsense. At the thought of this, more and more tears welled up in the baby's eyes. His heart ached even more. Woo, sister. My sister. Where are you? Someone is bullying your baby. The baby wailed in its heart. Later, the more it thought about it, the more miserable it became. It simply couldn't help but cry. Why are you crying? If you keep crying, I'll spank your butt. Huanqin threatened. As soon as he arrived, he heard crying. After entering the room, he saw the baby crying miserably. Those who didn't know would definitely think that it had suffered a lot. You bad person. Who are you? Why am I here? Where's my sister? I want my sister. Quickly let me go, otherwise, big sister will not let you off. When Bao Bao saw that Huan Chen had left it here, it quickly roared. However, with its pitiful appearance and large patches of fur wet with tears, even if it roared, it didn't seem to have much power. This man was the person it had seen when it had opened its eyes. He was also the one who had woken it up. However, after it had woken up, this man had brought it here without a word, then given it these crystals before leaving. This was its second time seeing Huan Chen, so baby had asked a bunch of questions in a hurry. Otherwise, it was afraid that Huan Chen would leave again. It didn't want to stay here any longer. It felt like vomiting when it saw these crystals. Even if these premium crystals were worth cities in the eyes of others, it didn't want them. He didn't want to see it. It really hated these stones. Looking at the baby's angry little appearance, Huan Chen laughed evilly. Then, he stretched out his long arm and directly scooped the baby into his hand, looking at it. You don't recognize me? Huan Chen asked with an evil smile. You're a bad guy. Should I know who you are? There were many things that it couldn't remember, so it had been sleeping all this time. At the same time, it was also working hard to cultivate. However, it really didn't have any impression of this annoying man. Of course. To tell you the truth, not only do we know each other, but we're also very close. Huan Chen rubbed the baby's little body with all his might and laughed extremely proudly. Hee hee. I didn't expect this guy to have such a day. This opportunity is really rare. I must grasp it and take the opportunity to bully it, he thought to himself. Chapter 1955, Poor Baby, 2, I don't have any impression. Upon hearing this, the baby's mood dropped and it temporarily put down the anger in its heart. Ha ha ha. It doesn't matter, after you finish eating these crystals, then continue eating it for a few more years, you'll definitely remember. Huan Chen laughed, but he couldn't help but feel disgusted in his heart. It's because you can't remember that I can bully you. Otherwise, what was the point of him playing? Arg! You still want to eat? Upon hearing Huan Chen's words, baby Su's expression changed instantly. The fur on her body stood up. Needless to say, she was angry, or rather, she was both angry and scared. Of course, your strength is too low. Therefore, you must recover your true strength as soon as possible. Where was the prestige of the past? TSK. The difference is too great. Huan Chen looked at the baby with disappointment. Do you really know me? The baby, who had been shocked, asked with some uncertainty. It didn't really believe this bad guy's words. However, its gut feeling told it that this bad guy was not lying to it. Damn it! Why couldn't it read this bad guy's heart? The baby was very depressed. I've said it before, we're acquaintances. I won't lie to a child, come. Call me uncle. Huan Chen said with certainty. Then, he guided baby to call him uncle. Uncle? Baby Su was confused. This person wanted her to call him uncle. What right did he have? However, Huan Chen took the baby's question as an affirmation. He laughed with satisfaction. Be good. How obedient. You're much more obedient than before, Huan Chen added in his heart. Little baby, you have to call me uncle when you see me in the future, okay? Huan Chen warned. Upon hearing this, baby Su's eyes widened and she glared at Huan Chen angrily. Why? No matter how it looked at this man, he didn't seem like an uncle. Moreover, they might have known each other in the past, so it wouldn't fall for this trick. There's no reason. Just do as I tell you to. Didn't you sound good just now? Huan Chen said in a domineering manner. If I call you uncle, can I stop eating these stones? Bao Bao raised its little head and asked. A wise man is a wise man. If it didn't have to eat those stones anymore, it would rather call this bad guy uncle. As for whether they really knew each other, it could be discussed in the future. It couldn't care less now. Of course not. These stones used to be your favorite. They are good for your cultivation, so you have to eat them. I'm doing this for your own good. So, be good. Work hard to eat the stones and increase your strength as soon as possible. Huan Chen coaxed. You're lying to me, right? How could I possibly like to eat rocks? After hearing Huan Chen's words, Bao Bao stared at him suspiciously, hoping to find some clues from his face. However, to its disappointment, Huan Chen's expression was so calm that there was no trace of a lie. Seeing this, Bao Bao was depressed again. Do I look like someone who would lie to you? Baby Su's words made Huan Chen feel extremely aggrieved. If you don't let me eat those stones, I'll believe that you won't lie to me. The baby's eyes turned and a plan came to her mind. That won't do. You must eat all those crystals. Moreover, you must believe me and call me uncle. Huan Chen laughed slyly like a fox. This little thing wanted to fight with him, but it was still too inexperienced. You're really too bad. The baby clenched its little paws in anger. Although it wanted to scratch him, it had to hold back. It was not his match. I'm not bad, I'm really doing this for your own good. Huan Chen suddenly said in a serious tone. Then, he continued, let me ask you, do you want to increase your strength to help your sister? Or do you want to be a burden to her forever and let her protect you? I want to increase my strength. I want to protect my sister. The baby said excitedly when he heard this. If that's the case, then do as I say. I will never harm you. Huan Chen said in all seriousness. At most, he's just bullying you, hee hee. If I do as you say, can I really improve my strength? Bao Bao was half convinced and half suspicious. If it was just to let it absorb those crystals, it had no objections, but to let it eat those cold and hard stones together, it was not too willing. It really didn't like that. Of course. When you've finished eating all the crystals I've given you, it'll give you another good thing that can quickly increase your strength. At that time, I guarantee that your strength will skyrocket. Dream Dust tempted. Really? But, what is a rocket? Bao Bao was confused. Was that thing very fast? Ah. This is not the main point, okay? The main point is that you have to eat all the Jingshi, otherwise, don't think about anything else. Huan Chen rebuked. Oh. Can't I use my own way to cultivate? The baby asked again. Are you saying that you'll keep sleeping? You think that's fast? Huan Chen was speechless. What else? Many beast men cultivate like that, it's so comfortable. Bao Bao said matter-of-factly. They are them, and you are you. I don't care how they cultivate, but you definitely can't. Huan Chen was a little angry when he heard Baby Su's unambitious words. This guy wasn't like this in the past. Now that he had reincarnated, why was he becoming more and more useless? He could not understand. In reality, Bao Bao could no longer be considered the fellow he once knew. Adding on the fact that Bao Bao's inherited memories had yet to fully recover, Bao Bao naturally did not look the same as Huan Chen. As a result, Bao Bao was destined to disappoint him. Fortunately, he adjusted his state of mind quickly. After roaring, he gently stroked the baby's fur that was half wet from tears and said softly, "Little baby, you can't go wrong by listening to Uncle. Uncle will harm anyone but you." Huan Chen's sudden change in attitude stunned Bao Bao. However, it still decided to follow the bad guy's words. After all, it really wanted to know what other good things this bad guy had that could make it increase its strength so quickly. After thinking it through, the baby calmed down and whispered, "I'll listen to bad uncle and eat all those stones." Moreover, when he said the word, stones, Bao Bao deliberately emphasized it because he really hated these stones. "Baby, be good. However, if you can remove the word, bad guy, and just call me uncle, I'll like you even more." Huan Chen's mouth twitched as he helplessly said, "I think that these two words fit your image very well, so I called you that." Bao Bao was very honest. Good children should not lie. This was what his sister had taught him. All right then. I'll also call you bad boy in the future. This is only fair. Huan Chen said through gritted teeth. He was very depressed by this difficult little thing. Chapter 1956, Poor Baby, 3, I'm a good baby, bad uncle can't call me that. The baby said, a little aggrieved. There's no room for discussion. I'll call you whatever you call me. Huan Chen said willfully. Luckily, Leng Ruoxue wasn't here. Otherwise, she would definitely blame him for bullying a child. All right then. Bao Bao compromised. It could tell that this man was not a good person. Now that its sister was not by its side, there was no one to support it, so it had to know its own limits. At the thought of this, Bao Bao asked tentatively, Bad uncle, can I see my sister? After seeing its sister, the first thing it would do was to complain to this bad guy, To dare to bully it, they must be tired of living. Of course not. Your sister is in seclusion. You won't be able to see her. Huan Chen said with a smirk as he saw through the baby's thoughts. Oh. When the baby heard this result, he immediately lowered his head in dejection and wanted to cry but had no tears. Bad baby, I think I should tell you that it's not easy to get out of here. If your strength doesn't meet the requirements to get out of here, you may not be able to see your sister for a long time. So, work hard on your cultivation. Huan Chen reminded with a faint smile. Ah! The baby felt as if it had been struck by lightning. These words were too much of a shock to it. Quickly go eat Jingshi. Huan Chen ignored the baby's shock and threw the baby into the pile of crystals. Then, he sat down on the side, ready to supervise the work. Seeing this, the baby could only resign himself to fate and continue eating. The baby who was eating the crystal had tears in his eyes, but he was fantasizing that the stone in his claws was his favorite silver snowfish. Only then did he feel a little better. And every time it ate a piece of crystal, it would fantasize that it was its favorite delicacy. This way, the speed at which the crystal was reduced was slightly faster. Not knowing how much time had passed, when the baby saw that there was only one crystal left in front of him, he was so excited that tears filled his eyes, but the next second, he immediately fell into tragedy. When Huan Chen saw that there was only one crystal left in front of the baby, he waved his hand and another small mountain of crystals appeared in front of the baby. The baby immediately fainted. Of course, it wasn't really unconscious. It was just pretending. Seeing baby like this, Huan Chen didn't expose it. Instead, he sat directly next to baby, stared at it, and sighed. Ai. You're so weak now, what are you going to do? I'm really worried for you. If your precious sister finds out that she has such a disappointing younger brother, she will definitely be disappointed. I promised her that I'd definitely train you into a strong person. Now that you're like this, I'm really embarrassed to tell her. Forget it, why don't I just tell her the truth? You're really a rotten beast that can't be helped. I think she will understand. When Huan Chen said this, he didn't hide the disappointment on his face. However, he was laughing in his heart. He also secretly looked at the baby's reaction from the corner of his eyes. Seeing the little guy's eyes constantly turning, he knew that the little guy must be very conflicted. Just as Huan Chen had thought, baby was in a dilemma. Although it wanted to become strong, it really didn't want to continue eating the tasteless crystals. If it ate more, it was afraid it would vomit. More importantly, it didn't understand that crystals weren't the only thing in the world that could provide spiritual qi, right? Why was this bad guy so insistent on making it eat these Jingshi? However, it probably wouldn't be able to figure this out in a short period of time. After struggling internally for a while, the baby reluctantly got up from the ground and looked at Huan Chen with resentment. He said aggrievedly, Can you first tell me how much Jingshi I still have to eat? This pile doesn't count, just eat 3 more and that'll do. Huan Chen said in a light voice. When the baby heard this, he instantly felt like dying. However, it finally knew that it had a difficult task now. Sob. For its sister, it would give it its all. Thinking of this, the baby also became more active. Without Huan Chen's urging, he picked up the pile of crystals on the ground and stuffed them into his mouth. Seeing this, Huan Chen's mouth opened in surprise. Did the sun rise from the west? However, no matter why baby Su suddenly took the initiative, it was a good thing for him. Leng Ruoxue and baby Su were working hard to increase their strength in the illusionary dust space. Meanwhile, Patian and the others were waiting outside the Leng family's main residence, eagerly hoping that Tu Liang would be able to dispel the great sky-guarding formation as soon as possible. Right now, it was no longer important for them to save her. What they were more concerned about was whether the array could be undone. This was because the array had kept them outside for too long. To experts like them, this array was equivalent to a slap to their faces. Unfortunately, Tu Liang's speed of breaking the formations wasn't fast. In one day, he couldn't even break 5 small formations. This fact made Patian and the others quite helpless, but they also knew that Tu Liang had tried his best. However, even though they understood the difficulty of this formation, it did not mean that they were not angry. However, Leng Ruoxue and the others had the protection of this formation, so they were truly helpless. They wanted to vent their anger on Leng Ruoxue and the others, but they couldn't break through their defensive formation. They wanted to vent their anger on the beast men in the land of evil demons, but they couldn't even find a strand of their hair. This fact caused many people's emotions to become more and more unstable. When Patian saw this, he could only temporarily let them leave the evil demon forest and go find some fun on his own. He also instructed them not to go far and to be on call. After Patian spoke, most of the people chose to leave temporarily. For a time, there were only 3 people left outside the Leng family's main residence. They were Patian, the dark-skinned man, and Tu Liang. Tu Liang was naturally in charge of breaking the formation, while Patian and the dark-skinned man stayed behind to protect him. The first elder and the others in the house saw those people leave through the light screen. Although they were puzzled, they didn't care too much. After all, if those people could all leave, they would be more than happy to do so. But after a day, they didn't think that way anymore. Because Uncle Long had received a message from the Endless Sea's beasts, saying that a group of strong people had come to the Endless Sea and started a massacre. In just one day, countless beasts of the Endless Sea had been killed or injured. According to Beastie's description, they also knew the identity of those people. And those people had gone to the Endless Sea after leaving them. So, for a time, the Great Elder and the others hoped that those people had not left. In that case, the beasts in the Endless Sea would not suffer. When Uncle Long heard the news, his face darkened and he didn't say a word. The Grand Elder and the others didn't even dare to say anything to comfort him. For a few days, the atmosphere in the house was rather dull and depressing. Uncle Long didn't speak for a few days. The First Elder and the others were worried. In the end, the First Elder was pushed out by Lu Feng and the others to be the representative. The reason was that he had a higher seniority and could speak to Uncle Long. This reason made the First Elder so angry that he glared at him. However, he still summoned up his courage and went to find Uncle Long, who had been sitting in the corner of the garden. After sitting in front of Uncle Long for a long time, the Great Elder cleared his throat, gathered his courage, and said in a low voice, "Uncle Long. If you have something to say, then say it." Uncle Long was a little helpless. He had seen the struggle of these little guys these past few days, but he was too lazy to say anything. "Uncle Long, don't be too sad. We will find a way to avenge the beasts that died in the Endless Sea." First Elder quickly said. "It's good that you have such intentions. As for this enmity, I will avenge them." Uncle Long nodded. Although many of the beasts in the Endless Ocean had died, most of them had escaped. Therefore, the loss of the Endless Ocean was not too great. But no matter what, the Endless Ocean was his birthplace, so he would never allow anyone to be presumptuous in the Endless Ocean. Since those people dared to cause trouble in the Endless Ocean, they must die. "Uncle Long, if you need anything, please let us know. We'll do our best." First Elder declared. "Yes, have you informed the Ning family's boy to be on guard?" Uncle Long nodded slightly and asked again. The Ning family's divine realm and the endless ocean were not far from here. Since those people had gone to the endless ocean, they might have gone to the Ning family's divine realm. In his opinion, the Ning family's divine realm was easier to deal with on land than the beasts in the sea. However, Uncle Long had overestimated the courage of those people. Although they dared to commit crimes in the endless ocean, they didn't dare to set foot in the Ning family's divine territory. After all, the Ning family played an important role in the human world. Once they provoked the Ning family, it was equivalent to provoking many top forces that had a good relationship with the Ning family. Therefore, they didn't dare to act rashly in front of the top human forces. "I've already told him," the great elder replied. In fact, as early as the incident at the Endless Sea, he had informed the old man of the Ning family at the first moment. However, the old man was not worried about his own territory at all. Instead, he kept asking how they were and to what extent the formation had been cracked. This fact made him quite speechless. Chapter 1957, Battle for Revenge, 1. In fact, the master of the Ning family only needed to ask. If it weren't for the elders of the Ning family and the beasts of the land of evil demons stopping him, he would have run here long ago. However, even if he didn't come, the master of the Ning family was like an ant in a hot pot, making the people of the Ning family tremble with fear. After hearing the great elder's words, Uncle Long nodded in relief. Although in his opinion, the Ning family's kid was a little out of line sometimes, in general, the kid's ability was not bad, so he did not worry about him anymore. But at this time, in the Ning family's main residence, it was covered in dark clouds. The Ning family's meeting room was also silent. The elders sitting there did not even dare to breathe. In such a large hall, even the sound of a needle dropping could be heard clearly. The master of the Ning family, who was sitting at the head of the table, had a dark face and did not speak for a long time. Since he did not speak, the other people in the Ning family naturally did not dare to speak first. The pressure in the meeting room became lower and lower. When the first elder of the Fire Wolf clan who was invited to the meeting saw this, he first wiped the cold sweat off his forehead without changing his expression. Then, he finally could not take it anymore and said, "Master Ning, you don't have to worry too much. Miss Leng and the others are good people, and heaven helps them. They'll be fine." After saying this, the senior elder of the Fire Wolf clan finally let out a sigh of relief. He had wanted to say this for a long time, but he didn't dare to say it when he saw Master Ning's distant look. Someone took the lead to speak, and the Ning family elders all echoed. "Yup. Master, you don't have to worry about that little girl. She's very smart and will protect herself well." The Ning family's second elder also quickly said. Actually, what he wanted to say more was that the girl was really cunning. She would be fine even if something happened to anyone. Besides, weren't the men in black and that old geezer from the Wen family captured? Hence, in his heart, he had long determined that it would not be easy for Patian to capture Leng Ruoxue and the rest. However, he only dared to think about it in his heart. He definitely didn't dare to say it out loud. Otherwise, the family head would definitely fly into a rage. Shuer is in closed-door cultivation. She didn't know about this at all. How do I protect myself? After hearing the second elder's words, the master of the Ning family finally reacted, but his expression became even uglier. From the meaning of his words, he was obviously dissatisfied with the second elder's words. When the second elder heard his father say this, he was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. Wu, the old man was too biased. He didn't seem to have said anything overboard. Why was she giving him that look? This, the second elder stammered, not knowing how to start. I know that many of you have some opinions about Shuer, but now is not the time to throw a tantrum, so you'd better put away those thoughts that you shouldn't have. I can tell you clearly, if Shuer loses even a single hair, you won't be able to live well in the future. The master of the Ning family said through gritted teeth. His words were not only dissatisfaction with the elders present, but also a warning. However, when the elders heard his words, they felt extremely aggrieved. Sob. How would they dare to have any opinions about Leng Ruoxue now? Not to mention having other thoughts. One had to know that ever since Leng Ruoxue had rescued the clan head and her clansmen from the mystic realm, her status in the hearts of the elders had been skyrocketing. They could not even wait to be grateful to Leng Ruoxue, yet they still dared to be dissatisfied with her. More importantly, if someone really wanted to make things difficult for Leng Ruoxue, the elders and clansmen who were rescued by Leng Ruoxue would not agree to it. They did not want to cause public anger. Hence, Leng Ruoxue's status in the Ning family was definitely different from before. However, their own grand elder was not aware of their thoughts. To put it bluntly, it was nothing more than the master not caring about them. Seeing the wronged expressions on the elders' faces, the master of the Ning family still didn't give them a good look. After warning them, he continued, "I've decided to go to the Endless Sea. Who will come with me? Patriarch, is it appropriate to go to the Endless Sea now? If someone comes to cause trouble now, we'll be in a very passive position without you." After hearing Master Ning's decision, some elders said very implicitly. At this critical moment, they didn't want their ancestor to leave. After all, as long as their ancestor was here, the Ning family would have a backbone, and the clansmen's hearts wouldn't be restless. Moreover, although the family head said that he would go there to take a look, if he really went, how could it be possible that he only needed to look? "I'm just going to take a look at the situation. I'll be back soon. Besides, are you all dead? If the Ning family doesn't have me, they'll become a pile of loose sand and will be easily broken through. I think the Ning family should disband as soon as possible." The master of the Ning family growled with dissatisfaction. After spending so much time with Leng Ruoxue and the others, he increasingly felt that Shuai'er's freedom-letting policy was not bad. Although a large part of it was because that girl was too lazy, Fengde and the others were definitely capable of holding their own. It was just that their strength was a little low now. When their cultivation was higher, they would definitely be 100 times stronger than the elders of the Ning family. So, it was impossible to say that he was not envious, jealous, and hateful. Therefore, he was also deliberately training these elders' ability to take charge of one side, so that they would not be too dependent on him. In fact, the elders of the Ning family were not as bad as the master of the Ning family thought. However, compared with Fengde and the others, they preferred to ask for the opinion of their ancestors to avoid making mistakes. As a result, the master of the Ning family naturally formed an impression that they had no opinions of their own. Compared with Fengde and the others, the master of the Ning family was even more dissatisfied with them. In fact, the reason why the Ning family's elders were so cautious in their actions was also related to the fact that the Ning family was a huge family. Because the family had many members, it was complicated and had many branches. Thus, if they were a little careless, they might be used as an excuse for malicious attacks by some people. As a result, they naturally had to be more careful, and this was definitely a disadvantage in a large family. Such a disadvantage was also very difficult to change. The main reason was that there were too many clansmen in the family, and the human heart was difficult to predict. Master Ning's words made all the elders present look embarrassed. Even the Fire Wolf clan's first elder who was listening by the side looked embarrassed for a moment. Should it not be attending today's meeting? It was somewhat regretful. Master Ning, I'll go with you to the Endless Sea. Seeing that the Ning family elders did not dare to speak, the Fire Wolf clan's first elder sighed helplessly. He even tactfully changed the topic so that the elders present would not be too embarrassed. Although my strength isn't high, running errands isn't a problem. The Grand Elder of the Fire Wolf clan quickly added. All right. The master of the Ning family nodded in satisfaction. No wonder Shuai likes to make friends with Beastie. Look at how loyal he is. Master, I'll go with you. Thank you, the second elder said after giving the first elder a grateful look. Chapter 1958, Battle for Revenge, 2, Second Brother. You can stay at home. Hearing the second elder's words, the master of the Ning family thought for a moment and said, if he's not here, the second elder is the most powerful person in the Ning family, so one of them must stay. This way, if someone really attacks, the Ning family won't be in a hurry. Yes. The second elder quickly responded. Master, I'll go with you. Patriarch, I'll go too. As soon as second elder's words fell, several other elders expressed their opinions. Among these people, if they had not been trained by Leng Ruoxue, then they had been rescued by her from the mystic realm. When the master of the Ning family heard their words, he was very pleased. After randomly picking a few names, he decided on the list of people who would go to the Endless Ocean. As for the beasts in the land of evil demons, after knowing that the great elder of the Fire Wolf clan and the master of the Ning family were going to the Endless Sea, they all expressed that they wanted to go with them. Seeing that they were so enthusiastic, the master of the Ning family did not want to dispel their enthusiasm. However, it was certainly not realistic for all of them to go, so he only picked a few of the beasts with the highest strength and the strongest defense to go to the Endless Sea with him. After setting off, the master of the Ning family teleported with the crowd and the beasts. After a few breaths, they arrived at the periphery of the Endless Sea. After eating the disguise pill, the beasts all turned into human beings, and the group began to walk toward the inner area of the Endless Sea. At the same time, the master of the Ning family released his divine sense, and as expected, he sensed dozens of people sitting on the beach. Seeing this, he sneered in his heart. These people were really bold. After doing such an evil deed, not only did he not leave in a hurry, he even started to roast meat. However, he was deeply impressed by their ability to eat the meat of sea beasts. That was because the meat of sea beasts was not that delicious. As he walked in the direction of those people, Master Ning contacted the beast clans in the Endless Ocean. The first clan he contacted was the Dolphin clan, which was the closest to Leng Ruoxue and the others. The old dolphin of the Dolphin clan was overjoyed after receiving the message from the master of the Ning family. It quickly reported their situation. After that, it privately contacted several of the strongest beast clans in the Endless Sea. After communicating with each other, they decided to cooperate from the inside and the outside to catch the humans off guard. During this time, many beasts in the Endless Ocean had been killed or injured. Although most of the beasts were from weaker races, they still belonged to the Endless Ocean. Therefore, the old dolphin and other beasts felt very aggrieved. However, on land, they were not the opponents of those humans, so they could only listen to Uncle Long and temporarily avoid those people's attacks and hide. But now, with the strong help of the master of the Ning family, the beasts in the Endless Ocean who knew the news were immediately in high spirits. He even took the initiative to cooperate with the master of the Ning family to capture all those hateful humans in one fell swoop. After the master of the Ning family learned of the sea beast's decision, he did not refuse, because he knew very well that these sea beasts were just like him. They had been holding a breath in their hearts and needed to vent it out. Otherwise, he would get sick from holding it in. However, he requested the sea beasts to not attack first and to listen to his command. The sea beasts all agreed. Very quickly, the Ning family head and the others arrived at the location of those people. At this moment, those people were sitting on huge rocks on the beach. Each of them had a vicious look on their faces. They were fiercely biting the roasted meat in their hands, as if they were venting their anger on the meat in their hands. "Who are you people? What are you doing here?" After sensing the aura of the strangers, one of them immediately asked. However, that person only glanced at the strength of Master Ning and the others, and his face showed contempt. These people were too weak, not even enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. We were just passing by and didn't know that you seniors were resting here. Sorry for disturbing you." The master of the Ning family pretended to be in fear and trepidation as he stammered. "If you know you're disturbing us, then quickly get out of our sight." The person who spoke took a bite of the slightly burnt meat and shouted. Yes, master." The master of the Ning family quickly replied in a low voice. He turned around and was about to leave with his men, but he was suddenly stopped by someone. "Stop. Since you're already here, you still want to leave?" "Humph. No way." Someone spoke again, clearly not planning to let them leave. What does Senior want? The master of the Ning family and the others, who were standing in place, deliberately acted as if they didn't know whether to leave or stay. They asked carefully, and at the same time, a hint of disdain flashed in their eyes so quickly that no one could catch it. How is it? Since you're here, then stay. The man laughed arrogantly. Stay? I don't understand what you mean, Senior. Master Ning's face was full of confusion, and he asked somewhat foolishly. Seniors, do you want us to stay for a meal? That's great. The first elder of the Fire Wolf clan also pretended to be drooling. Ha ha ha. Let you stay for dinner. Are you guys daydreaming? The man's smile was very evil, but the master of the Ning family and the great elder of the Fire Wolf clan were confused. If you don't want us to stay for dinner, why do you want us to stay? Fire Wolf's first elder's face was filled with question marks. Ha ha ha. The reason why we kept you here is naturally to give our beastie an extra meal. The man stated his purpose, and upon hearing his words, the others all laughed wildly. Yes. Since these people had fallen into their hands, they could forget about leaving this place alive. It just so happened that they had not had enough fun killing before, so these people could only admit that they were unlucky. We don't understand what you mean, Senior. More importantly, none of us are good at cooking. Hearing that person's words, the Ning family's master said with an embarrassed expression. However, when the Ning family's elders and beasts heard the Ning family's master's words, they all started to think in their hearts. Master Ning. You're too much of a fool. In fact, it's not difficult to understand what he's saying. When the man heard Master Ning's words, he was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect this man to be an idiot. Fuck. He felt that his words had been in vain. This fact made him a little angry from embarrassment. Then, he roared, do you think I'm keeping you here so that you can be chefs? Otherwise? The Fire Wolf clan's great elder asked very cooperatively. However, the expression on his face clearly said, you're not asking us to stay for a meal, and you're not asking us to be your chefs. What are you guys doing? Its ignorant expression completely infuriated the man. His face turned red with anger and he roared loudly, leaving you behind will only serve as food for our beastie. Oh. When the Ning family's master and the others heard this, they responded softly and didn't have any other reaction. When the man saw this, he was a little dumbfounded. Fuck. What kind of situation was this? Shouldn't these people's faces be deathly pale and ashen when they heard that they were going to be food for their beasts? Why was his reaction so calm? The way they were acting made him swallow the words he wanted to say back into his stomach, and this feeling was very uncomfortable. Chapter 1959, Battle for Revenge, 3. In fact, he wanted to see these people trembling in fear and begging for mercy on their knees. Only then would they be able to satisfy their despicable interests and relieve their depression. But now, these people's reactions seemed to make him more depressed. He was definitely not the only one who was even more depressed. Brothers, I didn't expect that we would meet some fools. Another person sighed. However, he was thinking that it was better to have these fools to be teased than to not meet anyone strong. It should be known that there was no doubt that they were depressed during this period of time. However, most of them had criminal records or had many enemies in the divine world. Therefore, even if they had bloodthirsty impulses, they did not dare to appear in the human territory of the divine world too brazenly. Otherwise, if their true identity was discovered, it would be a big trouble for them. This was also the main reason why they only dared to come to the endless sea to kill. However, killing these sea beasts was not satisfying enough. More importantly, they could not go into the deep sea. After all, the strength of the sea beasts in the deep sea was not much weaker than theirs. The sea was also the territory of the sea beasts. Therefore, although they wanted to vent their anger, they had to consider their own safety. Therefore, most of the sea beasts that suffered in the endless sea were only some of the weaker races. However, now that they saw the master of the Ning family and the others, they felt that they could have fun again. In their eyes, the master of the Ning family and the others were no different from dead people. Moreover, these weak humans had taken the initiative to come to their door. Since that was the case, they naturally would not be polite. Ha ha ha. Silly boys, quickly kneel down and kowtow to this lord. If this lord is happy, I won't kill you. At this moment, someone jeered. You've gone too far. How can you treat us like this? Hearing this, the Fire Wolf clan's head elder pretended to be angry and roared. However, his trembling body revealed his nervousness and fear, which pleased his savage opponent even more. Seeing the first elder of the Fire Wolf clan's reaction, those people laughed wildly again. However, the first elder of the Fire Wolf clan didn't care at all, because he could already see the end of these people. Thinking of what these people had done in the endless ocean, the Fire Wolf clan's great elder was deeply affected. If they had not withdrawn from the land of evil demons early on, they would have been the first to suffer. Therefore, they also gritted their teeth in hatred towards these people. After they were done laughing, they arrogantly said to Master Ning and the others, "What's wrong with treating you like this? In the divine realm, the strong are respected. We're willing to let you kowtow a few times because we think highly of you, so don't you dare be ungrateful." That's right. You should be proud to be able to make you our beasties' food. You should know that not everyone has the chance to do so. In front of us, you're just ants. Just do whatever we ask you to do. What nonsense are you talking about? Although you're ants, your deaths must be worth something. So, you have to thank us properly. If it weren't for our kindness, your corpses would have been exposed in the wilderness. We don't attack the weak easily. You're lucky today. If it were any other time, you wouldn't have such an opportunity. Listening to the opponent's bold words, and looking at their kind appearance, the Ning family and the beasts were a bit dumbfounded. How shameless must these people be to say such words? Now they knew that before they died, they should be grateful that others were willing to attack them. Otherwise, they would not even be qualified to die in their hands. At the thought of this, the Ning family elders and the beasts were all a little angry. However, at this moment, the master of the Ning family smiled faintly. Well said. Since you've said it for me, I won't repeat it. The master of the Ning family said calmly. After he finished speaking, he suddenly stretched out a palm, and with lightning speed, grabbed one of them in his hand. That person didn't even have time to react. Seeing this, those people who had been arrogant were also stunned to varying degrees. When they came back to their senses, they all stared at Master Ning in disbelief. Who are you? I can't believe we were wrong. Not only are you not an ant, but you're also an expert. The most powerful man among them asked vigilantly. The man who was captured was the weakest among them, so he didn't know the real strength of Master Ning. He even guessed that Master Ning was at least a divine emperor. Even if his opponent was a hierarch, his strength should be equal to his, because he was also a hierarch. He thought Master Ning's speed was an accident. After all, they were too careless. Ha ha ha. It doesn't matter who I am. What's important is that you're all dead today. The master of the Ning family was full of killing intent. These people would be a disaster if they were left alive. More importantly, he couldn't let them meet up with Patian. He had come this time to cut off one of Potion's arms to relieve some pressure for Uncle Long and the others. What big words. If you want to kill us, you'll have to see if you have the ability. The hierarch, who was the most powerful among them, said contemptuously. Don't worry, I'll let you see. I'll start with you. The master of the Ning family smiled faintly, and then said to the person in his hand. Don't. Third brother. Save me. The man was scared, and his legs kept shaking. If the master of the Ning family hadn't held him, he would have sat on the ground. No one can save you. The master of the Ning family said coldly. Then, he placed a palm on top of the man's head and injected a strong divine power into it. The man only struggled slightly before he stopped breathing. The master of the Ning family threw the man on the ground. The great elder of the Fire Wolf clan saw this and quickly threw a small flame on the man. In an instant, the man's body was set on fire. When the Ning family elders saw this, they couldn't help but twitch their lips. They were all too familiar with this scene. This was clearly Leng Ruoxue and her gang's technique. Hee. I'm used to it. The Fire Wolf clan's first elder smiled shyly when he received the Ning clan's elders' shocked gazes. He was very embarrassed. After spending so much time with Leng Ruoxue's beasts, he had also developed the habit of disposing of rubbish. Ugh! When the Ning family elders heard this, they were rather speechless. This kind of thing could also become a habit. It seemed like Beastie, who had been with Leng Ruoxue for a long time, would eventually learn to be bad. However, they were rather impressed by Leng Ruoxue. She had only been in the land of evil demons for a short period of time, yet she had already assimilated the beasts there. However, if Leng Ruoxue knew what they were thinking, she would definitely cry out that she was being wronged because she was not the one who taught them these things. At this moment, the hierarch saw that the master of the Ning family dared to kill in front of him. Suddenly, the anger of being provoked rose in his heart. His eyes were spewing fire, his face was as dark as the bottom of a pot, and the blue veins on his forehead were throbbing. Then he roared, You dare to kill my brother. I won't let you off. After that, the reverent god pounced on Master Ning like a tiger pouncing on its prey. At the same time, he threw the divine power gathered in his hand at Master Ning mercilessly. Then, with a flash of cold light, a long knife appeared in his hand. The knife glinted and turned into a material object, slashing at Master Ning. Seeing this, the master of the Ning family was still calm. At the same time, he gave the others a look, and they immediately found their longtime opponents and began to fight. At the same time, the master of the Ning family also attacked. Two beautiful phoenixes with endless pressure pounced at the reverent god-level expert. The two phoenixes were naturally condensed by the master of the Ning family with his wind divine power. As soon as the two phoenixes appeared, the reverent god-level expert immediately sensed the true strength of the master of the Ning family. His expression became more and more serious. He knew that they had kicked an iron plate this time. The strength of the opponent was definitely above his. He was not the only one who felt this way. After the real fight, they all realized that the strength of their opponent was beyond their expectations. This fact made them secretly resentful. However, the thing that made them vomit blood had yet to come. Not long after the two sides fought, the originally calm surface of the endless sea began to surge with huge waves. However, they were in the middle of the battle and did not notice it. It was only when they felt that their opponents suddenly increased in number that they realized something was wrong. But at this moment, it was too late. This time, the number of beasts participating in the war in the Endless Sea was unexpectedly large, and this was the result of the old dolphin and other beast elites' careful selection. Otherwise, the beasts of the Endless Sea would have been mobilized collectively. After all, these humans had brought great harm to the beasts of the Endless Sea. If it were not for the fact that their strength would be greatly reduced on land, how could they allow these humans to kill in their own homes? This fact made them feel humiliated, and now was the best time for them to take revenge for the beasts that died in the Endless Sea. They naturally would not let it go. To them, this was a battle for revenge. Chapter 1960, The Test, 1. As soon as the beasts of the Endless Sea came ashore, they immediately surrounded the two sides in the battle. Then, according to the previous plan, some of the beasts watched and were ready to pick up the leftovers, while the others rushed toward the two sides in the battle. Of course, their main targets were those who did evil in the Evil Sea. Their appearance immediately turned the situation on the battlefield one-sided. However, the Ning family elders pretended not to know them, while Potions sighed. After seeing these beasts taking advantage of the situation, the anger in their hearts swish 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 to the top of their heads. Fuck. These sea beasts were really too hateful. They actually took advantage of the time when they were fighting to launch a sneak attack. Moreover, it seemed like he was targeting them. Thinking of this, Puotian's subordinates were secretly resentful, but at this time, they would never have thought that the beasts of the endless sea were in cahoots with Master Ning and the others. After all, to most people's knowledge, humans and beasts rarely cooperated. Although Puotian's subordinates were all a little angry from embarrassment, the Ning family's elders and beasts didn't care about that. They still fought as they should. The beasts of the endless ocean specialized in sneak attacks. When the two sides were fighting, they attacked Puotian's subordinates. As a result, they were attacked from top to bottom, and suddenly all of them were in a mess. Seeing this, the reverent god who was fighting Master Ning was furious. "Who are you people? If you have the guts, report your name." The reverent god's face darkened as a huge flame burned in his heart. If he didn't have a trace of rationality left, he would have already fought to the death with these people. What a joke. Do you think we have to tell you our names just because you want us to? Hearing this, the master of the Ning family laughed. Seeing the slightly mocking smile of the master of the Ning family, the reverent god became even more angry. "What's wrong? You don't dare to." "Humph. What kind of expert are you if you hide your head and show your tail?" The reverent god deliberately provoked him, but the master of the Ning family was not moved at all. "It's not that I don't dare to, but it's unnecessary." The master of the Ning family smiled and said disapprovingly. The reverent god felt a headache when he saw the master of the Ning family keeping his mouth shut. This man was so cunning that he couldn't figure out his true identity. This fact made him quite depressed. He didn't know when such an expert had appeared in the divinity. He claimed to know the powerhouses of the divine world like the back of his hand, but he had never heard of such a powerhouse in the divine world. At this time, he would never have thought that the one fighting with him was the master of the Ning family. Of course, the master of the Ning family did not intend to let him know. Otherwise, if he passed the news to Puotian in the land of evil demons, the Ning family would be in trouble. Not only that, but he also felt that he should end the battle quickly in case these people found help. At the thought of this, he sent a collective voice transmission to the crowd and beasts, telling them to hurry up. He himself used 90% of his strength to fight the reverent god in front of him. With the command of the master of the Ning family, the elders and beasts of the Ning family were suddenly in high spirits and used all their strength, striving to hit these people in one blow. As a result, the pressure on Puotian's subordinates increased sharply, and soon, their movements were a bit messy. The elders of the Ning family and the beasts seized the opportunity and attacked at the same time. In an instant, several people were directly killed and the others were all injured. Seeing this, they attacked at the same time again. After taking turns to attack, 2/3 of Puotian's subordinates were soon killed and the other 1/3 were seriously injured. The one with the lightest injury was probably the reverent god who was fighting with the master of the Ning family. The reason why he was the least injured was also greatly related to the Ning family's master's leniency. Who asked the Ning family's master to be so evil as to let him personally see his brothers fall one by one? To that reverent god, this was definitely not a small stimulation. The fact was as Master Ning had expected. When the reverent god, who was fighting with Master Ning, saw his companions die one by one and he was helpless, he was so resentful that he even had the idea of swallowing Master Ning alive. Unfortunately, he was entangled by Master Ning and couldn't save those people in time. He didn't miss each person's death from the corner of his eyes, which made him so angry that his eyes were about to crack and bloodshot. His eyes were spewing fire. Seeing his expression, the master of the Ning family had no doubt that this man's hatred for him had reached an indescribable level. However, he did not take it to heart. After all, battles were cruel. It was either you die or I die. More importantly, none of them had a clean background. Their hands had been stained with the blood of countless people and beasts. They had to pay for it sooner or later, so they should have expected this day to come. However, it was one thing to expect it, and another to see his brother who had gone through life and death with him die with his own eyes. Moreover, the reverent god had never thought that they would one day be forced into such a sorry state. After all, even the divine lord's estate could do nothing to them. However, They had capsized in a small river today. This fact was too great a blow to him. He could not bear it. Thinking of this, he quickly sent a message to Patian for help, but who knew that Patian didn't give him any reply. How? How could this be possible? The reverend god couldn't believe it, but he knew very well that his message hadn't been sent out. He looked at the master of the Ning family in shock and became more vigilant. How powerful was this man that he could even cut off his message? Such strength was truly too terrifying. The master of the Ning family, who was standing in front of him, saw the reverend god's expression and said with a light smile, "What, are you planning to find Patian to save you?" "Stop dreaming, how could I let you have that chance?" Master Ning's words were light, but the reverend god's face turned pale instantly. He stared at Master Ning in disbelief and asked, How did you do that? Just who are you? You think he'll tell you?" The master of the Ning family grinned evilly, feeling very proud of himself. In fact, he really couldn't cut off the other party's voice transmission like the reverend god had thought. He had only used a little trick to slow down the speed of the other party's voice transmission. However, this way, his divine power was consumed at an unusually fast rate, so he had to keep throwing pills into his mouth while he was talking. Seeing their master's heroic act of boldly consuming elixirs, the Ning family's elders could not help but feel embarrassed. The corners of their mouths twitched non-stop because they knew that this was something their master had learned from that girl, Len Ruoxue. "Woo, master! You've also become bad." Many elders couldn't help but think in their hearts. However, they didn't dare to say these words in front of the family head. Otherwise, they would be the unlucky ones. Chapter 1961, The Test, 2. When the Fire Wolf clan's great elder saw this, he also looked at Master Ning with envy, jealousy, and hatred. He thought to himself, it's good to be rich. It looked like they had to think of a good way to make money in the future. With such a thought, the Fire Wolf clan, which loved money, appeared in the divine realm in the future. However, the reverend god was the one who was the most affected among the crowd and the beasts. He kept panting and his eyes were about to pop out. The hand pointing at Master Ning was shaking violently, but he was so angry that he could not say a word. Seeing his face red and his neck rough, and his panting appearance, the master of the Ning family began to worry for him. "Are you all right? Is she sick?" "Ai. If you're sick, you have to be treated. You can't do it like this," the master of the Ning family advised earnestly. His ordinary face after the disguise was full of worry. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the reverend god was so angry that he fainted. Seeing this, the Ning family elders all wanted to go up and find out what was going on, but they were stopped by their master with a wave of his hand. "Don't go over, he might be pretending. I'm just waiting for you silly rabbits to come to my door," the master of the Ning family reminded them loudly. However, when the silly rabbits heard this, they didn't know what to say. Were they really that silly? Then, the master of the Ning family continued, "While he's pretending to be unconscious, you guys quickly clean up those who are still breathing. Don't leave any survivors." "Yes." All the elders and beasts responded in unison. Then, those who were still struggling on their last breath were in big trouble, because all the elders and beasts had vented all their anger on them. They were determined not to let them die too easily. The breathtakingly tortured subordinates were tortured by the Ning family's elders and beasts until they wished they could die. Not long after, those who were still alive were all on the verge of death. "Just kill me. Please, I beg you, kill me. Don't torture me." Some people begged for mercy in pain, regretting that they had provoked them. Unfortunately, this was not something they could avoid even if they regretted it, because Master Ning and the others were coming for them. "Just kill us. Give us a quick death." The remaining heaven-crushing subordinates all begged for mercy. This was the most sullen moment of their lives. They couldn't even die. "Kill you? I'll give you a quick death," the head elder of the Fire Wolf clan asked with a smile. "Yes, yes." The subordinates of breathtakingly lying on the beach hurriedly nodded. You guys wish. Didn't you treat us like ants just now? How can an expert beg for mercy from an ant? If this gets out, do you still want to be human? The Fire Wolf clan's Grand Elder said worriedly. We were wrong. You are not ants, we are. Now we just want to die. I beg you, please help us. Some people continued to beg for mercy. No. Your third brother hasn't even begged for mercy. How can you all die before him? However, your endurance is much better than his. That guy actually pretended to faint. You're really too gutless. The Fire Wolf clan's Great Elder had a look of disdain on his face when he said this. However, the heaven-crushing subordinates who had heard his words didn't know how to continue. They knew very well that their third brother wasn't pretending to faint. He had really fainted. He had fainted from anger. To be able to make a reverent god faint from anger, it was enough to prove that these people's skills were extraordinary. They couldn't be unconvinced. However, after the Fire Wolf clan's chief elder finished speaking, he still evilly threw a small flame at the person closest to him. Instantly, that person's body caught on fire, and he jumped 3 times high before he jumped into the sea with a plop. Wow! And this action was so swift. It seems like we haven't mastered our skills yet. The Fire Wolf clan's Grand Elder muttered to himself with some regret. I didn't master it, this person is mine. At this moment, a huge whale floated up from the sea, and on its back was the man who had jumped into the sea in a hurry. However, that person was currently unconscious. Ah! You're trying to snatch food from the wolf's mouth. But I want to know, why did this person faint? The Fire Wolf clan's head elder grumbled before asking curiously. I ate too much stomach acid. When he jumped into the sea, he just happened to fall into my mouth. The whale said with an innocent expression. There was also a hint of grievance in its clear black eyes. Arg! You're not poisoned, are you? This person is unhygienic. What? The Fire Wolf clan's head elder immediately cried out in alarm. He even looked at the huge whale with a worried expression. I'm fine. My poison resistance is strong, but he was the one who was poisoned by me. The large whale chuckled. That's good. Hearing this, the Grand Elder of the Fire Wolf clan finally felt relieved. Even though they had never had much of a relationship with the beasts of the endless ocean, with Lengruoshua as a bridge, they could be considered friends now. Now that they had joined forces to fight against the enemy, they naturally had to care for each other. However, when the Ning family elders heard their conversation, they were rendered speechless. In fact, they were even more certain that these beasts had learned the bad things from Lengruoshua. The unlucky Lengruoshua had been shot while lying down. Then, the beasts of the endless ocean took turns to torture the surviving Preeper's subordinates. Finally, they kindly sent them on their way. In the end, on the vast beach, apart from the master of the Ning family and the beasts, the only living opponent was the unconscious Reverend God. Not long after, the Reverend God finally opened his eyes. However, when he saw that he was surrounded by people and beasts, he really wished he could faint again. Even if he was a Reverend God, it was impossible for him to fight against 100 people alone. Moreover, he was quite badly injured. If you dare to faint again, I'll strip you naked and take naked photos for everyone in the immortal realm to know. Master Ning threatened with a smile. You're so despicable. The Reverend God was livid with anger, but the beasts laughed wretchedly when they heard Master Ning's words. Hee hee. It's good to be stripped. Quickly strip him naked. I haven't seen the body of a Reverend God yet. Some beastie jeered. You see, my beastie friends are giving you so much face. The master of the Ning family smiled ambiguously. Seeing that the Reverend God was so angry at them that he almost vomited blood, he was in a good mood, and the depression that had been there for the past few days was swept away. Who cares? The Reverend God gritted his teeth in hatred. You don't care? If that's the case, why are you still being so polite? Quickly strip him naked, then we'll take a nude photo and leave. Seeing this, the master of the Ning family directly ordered the beastie beside him. "You're so despicable." "I didn't faint." The reverend god quickly reminded him. "As long as I'm happy, I don't care if you faint or not," the master of the Ning family said shamelessly. Then, he raised his hand, signaling the beasts to act quickly. Chapter 1962, The Test, 3, Hehe. "Leave this matter to us, we guarantee that it will be done properly." Upon seeing this, Fire Wolf's first elder promised. After he finished speaking, he made the first move. A tiny red flame instantly flew to the reverent god-level cultivator's body, but it only burned his clothes. When the beasts of the endless sea saw this, they were not to be outdone. However, most of them were water attribute beasts with divine power. Therefore, once they attacked, the fire of the Fire Wolf First Elder was immediately extinguished. "What are you guys doing?" "I'm setting a fire, and you're going to help him put out the fire?" When Fire Wolf's First Elder saw that his flames had been extinguished, he was a little angry. Was this considered an internal conflict? "Hehe. I made a mistake." The beastie that had extinguished the fire said apologetically. "What do we do now?" The head elder of the Fire Wolf clan felt a headache coming on when he saw the reverent god-level spirit being drenched like a chicken. The effect would definitely not be good if he was drenched. "That's easy, you can just use fire to dry his body." The beastie thought for a while and suggested. "AI. That's the only way." The first elder of the Fire Wolf clan sighed helplessly. He looked reluctant, but in fact, he was excited. This was a once-in-lifetime opportunity. He could actually see the supreme god embarrass himself. Hehe. He laughed wretchedly in his heart. Then, with a wave of his hand, a flame slightly larger than the previous one floated to the reverend god's body. Immediately after, the reverend god's body burst into flames that were half the height of a person. Seeing this, the Ning family's elders and the beasts collectively stepped back to avoid being affected by the flames. However, seeing how big the flames were, they couldn't help but worry. "He won't be burned to death by your flames, right?" Some beasts couldn't help but ask. If this guy was burned to death just like that, they wouldn't be able to play anymore. "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. He won't burn to death. Moreover, the body of a reverent god is so strong, how can it not burn?" The great elder of the Fire Wolf clan was very confident. After a short while, the flames were retracted, and the reverent god was completely clean. Not even a hair could be seen. Seeing this, all the beasts and the elders of the Ning family took out their memory crystals and gave him a close-up from head to toe. After that, the beasts took out their weapons and waved them in front of the reverend god. What do you guys want?" The reverend god, who wanted to faint but couldn't move and wanted to faint, growled with a red face while enduring the humiliation that these damn humans and beasts had given him. "Yo! He's quite energetic. It seems like you still have the strength to play with us." A sea beast laughed evilly, its eyes full of hatred. After it finished speaking, it was the first to stab the reverend god with its sharp weapon that was like an iron plier. "Ah!" The screams continued. At this time, the master of the Ning family walked to the side and sat down, watching the show. After a long time, Master Ning felt that it was about time. He told the beasts who were seeking revenge to stop and then sent the reverend god to see his ancestor. After destroying the corpses and getting rid of all traces, the master of the Ning family immediately led his men out of the endless ocean. The sea beasts also all dove back into the deep sea and hid. When Padian received the news that his subordinates had encountered a strong enemy, he quickly rushed to the endless sea. The surface of the endless sea had already returned to its calm. There was no one on the beach, and the aura of his subordinates had disappeared without a trace. He also had a bad premonition in his heart. Suddenly, a sea of fire ignited in his heart. His anger burned through the sky, and he vented all his anger on the sea. He kept throwing out his palms, each palm was full of pressure and abundant divine power. In the blink of an eye, the the surface of the endless sea was rolled up with monstrous waves, and many weak sea beasts were swept to the beach by the waves. However, these sea beasts that had been brought up by the waves were so weak that they couldn't even speak. Patian couldn't get anything out of them. In a fit of anger, Patian killed all of them and destroyed more than half of the beach to vent his anger. Originally, he had planned to go to the bottom of the sea to find out more about the situation, but he was afraid that he would fall into the enemy's trap, so he could only give up. Patian, who had rushed back to the land of evil demons, had been gloomy and silent since he returned. At this time, the dark-skinned man had also found out that his third brother and the others had all died. This fact made him angry and hateful. He couldn't understand. Who had the strength to kill third brother and the others? In order to save the one family head as soon as possible, they had brought along the most powerful elites. Now, they had suffered heavy losses. How could he not feel heartache? At this moment, he even hated the head of the Wen family. If it wasn't for the fact that he had to save him, how could the brothers who had followed him through life and death for so many years have fallen in the endless ocean? Not even their corpses could be found. It was too hateful. He had to avenge his dead brothers, so everyone in this house was dead. At this moment, Uncle Long and the great elder in the main residence of the Leng family had already known about this. The great elder couldn't help sighing, "Vent your anger." He was definitely taking his anger out on them. That old man was afraid that he couldn't defeat the great demon Patian, so he could only vent his anger on the little minions around him. He should be happy now. When the great elder said this, he was actually envious in his heart, because he also wanted to be like the Ning family's old man and start a massacre on those people outside. Unfortunately, there was a heaven breaker outside, and they did not have enough confidence to defeat that old thing, so they did not dare to act rashly. Uncle Long, Patian has lost so many of his subordinates, and now he only has 3 people with him. Do you think we should take this opportunity to attack? First Elder suggested after some thought. Although there are only 3 people outside, there are 2 hierarch experts. I can only hold Patian back at most. We don't know the strength of the other hierarch expert, so I really don't have enough confidence to defeat them. Moreover, so many of their people have died. If more helpers come here, we will be in a passive position. Uncle Long said calmly. In fact, there was another reason why he did not dare to leave the house. Shuai was in seclusion and none of them could control the defensive array. Once one of them left the house, it would definitely give the opponent an opportunity. Once a hole appeared in the array, it would be easier for the opponent to crack it. Therefore, he could not and did not dare to let the people in the house take the risk. Let's wait. Uncle Long glanced at the first elder, who had a conflicted look on his face, and consoled him. Why wouldn't he want to go out and have a good fight with his opponent? However, he couldn't let anyone out before he had absolute confidence. The great elder nodded helplessly. He knew that Uncle Long was right. Help me thank the Ning family's boy. Uncle Long suddenly changed the topic and went back to his room. Just like that, the days continued. Just as Uncle Long had expected, a few days later, many people came to the heaven-crushing sect. Looking through the light screen at the black mass of people's heads outside the house, First Elder said with a headache, "How many people are there on the other side?" At least 100 people. It seems that the death of Potion's subordinates a few days ago has angered him, so I guess he has gathered all his men. However, the strength of these people is obviously much worse than those before. Uncle Long calmly analyzed. At this time, he received a voice transmission from the beasts in the Endless Sea, saying that someone had gone to the Endless Sea to cause trouble again. However, they were prepared this time, so the other party had returned without success. After carefully warning the beasts in the Endless Sea to be more careful, Uncle Long temporarily put aside his attention on the Endless Sea. After all, the situation here was more critical. Within the dream dust space, Len Ruoxu's situation was not looking good either. Inside, she was trying her best to refine the origin of chaos. At this moment, her clothes had long been stained with blood, and her originally tender and white skin had tiny cracks and wrinkles. Her face was pale, and this was only her appearance. The evildoer who had been watching her knew very well that Shui-Er's refinement had reached the most critical moment. The domineering origin of chaos had already manifested in her body. Shui-Er's soul would definitely feel even worse. But now, he could not help her. Shui-Er could only rely on herself. Because this was a test from the origin of chaos. In reality, it was just as the demon had predicted. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue felt as though she was in a sea of fire. Her entire body was about to be roasted dry by the fire. Even though she did not know what was going on, there was a voice in her heart that kept telling her to persevere. After the scorching heat, Leng Ruoxue felt cold again. It wasn't an ordinary cold, but a bone-chilling cold, the kind of cold that chilled the heart. It didn't take long for Leng Ruoxue to realize that her soul was almost frozen. At this time, her body also began to shiver, and her clothes were quickly soaked by the cold air. After enduring the cold, dozens of bolts of lightning as thick as fingers struck her weak body. Damn it! What the hell is this? Leng Ruoxue was so angry that she wanted to curse. However, in the end, she held it in. Her unyielding character made her want to compete with the lightning. After all, she was no stranger to lightning. However, these lightning bolts seemed to be playing hide-and-seek with her. Every time Leng Ruoxue wanted to challenge them, they would all hide. And when Leng Ruoxue didn't want to bother with them, they would come out of nowhere to tease her. Chapter 1963, You Two Are Friends. 1. Her beautiful eyes stared at the mischievous lightning without a change in expression. Leng Ruoxue's heart was depressed for a moment. In fact, she, who was in seclusion, had no idea what was going on. In order to concentrate on her closed-door cultivation, she had sealed off all her senses. Therefore, other than occasionally using her divine sense to check on the situation within her body, it could be said that she was completely unaware of the movements of the wind and grass outside. However, just as she was trying her best to absorb spiritual energy and preparing to break through, she suddenly felt that the spiritual energy seemed to be somewhat lacking. Immediately after, a milky white ball ran into her body, and she immediately felt that the spiritual energy in her body was filled to the brim. Even though Leng Ruoxue was not sure what the milky white ball was, it was a good thing that it could replenish her spiritual energy. However, after the milky white ball had circulated a few times in her body, not only did it occupy her dantian, but it had also absorbed all the divine energy that she had painstakingly stored in her dantian. Leng Ruoxue was instantly enraged. Was this thing here to help her or to rob her? At the same time, there was a voice in the depths of her heart telling her that she had to defeat this milky white ball. Since she had to defeat it, Leng Ruoxue naturally treated the mysterious ball as her enemy. It was also because of this that the battle between the human and the ball in her dantian began. After a long while, just as Leng Ruoxue felt the light of victory, the milky white ball changed its playstyle. It was the same fire, ice, lightning, and so on that she felt now. And now, Leng Ruoxue was being toyed with by the lightning. Those lightning bolts that were as thick as a finger were as cunning as slippery fish. You couldn't catch them, and when you didn't catch them, they would angrily sway in front of you. Leng Ruoxue could even see the disdainful expressions in the lightning bolts. This fact made her feel extremely conflicted. But very quickly, Leng Ruoxue calmed down. After she calmed down, she focused her astral body into her dantian and ignored the mischievous lightning. When the lightning saw this, it looked at each other as if it had a life of its own. Then, it started to circle around Leng Ruoxue. Actually, even though Leng Ruoxue didn't pay any attention to them, she had been secretly using her divine sense to observe them. Hence, after seeing their reaction, Leng Ruoxue was extremely puzzled. Why didn't the lightning attack her like the fire and ice before? Instead, it was like a naughty child playing with her. However, she was not in the mood to play hide-and-seek with them. She still had to defeat the ball that had somehow entered her body. At the thought of this, Leng Ruoxue's expression became even more unmoved, and she even ignored their teasing. The lightning bolts circled around Leng Ruoxue a few times, but when they realized that she had no reaction, they felt a little dejected. Some of the lightning bolts even dimmed down. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue seized the opportunity and attacked instantly. In an instant, a white web of light enveloped the lightning around her. Leng Ruoxue finally smiled when she saw this. "You cunning little things, I've finally caught you." Leng Ruoxue mumbled to herself. However, the lightning within the light net started to look down on her even more. "Yo! You still dare to look down on me?" Leng Ruoxue was exasperated. These lightning bolts were too vivid. It was as if they had a mind of their own. At the thought of this, she couldn't help but stretch out a slender finger and touch the light net. She gently poked at the lightning bolts' bodies and grabbed a small lightning bolt in her hand. However, the lightning bolt that Leng Ruoxue had caught was not afraid of her at all. In fact, it was rather calm and allowed her to do whatever she wanted. Seeing this, Leng Ruoxue became even more puzzled. However, she didn't have much time to think about it. The lightning that she had covered in the net of light disappeared mysteriously and was replaced by bursts of green whirlwinds. There was a wind eye in each of the green whirlwinds. The whirlwinds were about half the height of a person, and they whistled from a distance. Around the whirlwinds, there were wind blades that flashed with a dazzling white light. Leng Ruoxue's heart shuddered when she saw this. Oh my god! What the hell is this? Who could kindly tell her what was going on? She had only gone into seclusion, how did she draw out these things? Leng Ruoxue was extremely depressed. However, looking at the whirlwind that was right in front of her, she did not dare to let her guard down. Even though the lightning did not attack her earlier, she did not know if the wind would convulse. Before the whirlwind arrived, Leng Ruoxue had already made preparations to attack at any moment. However, to her surprise, the wind blades around the whirlwind did not charge towards her. Instead, the whirlwind surrounded her. Then, her body started to shake like leaves in the wind. Damn it, was he trying to blow her away? Leng Ruoxue tried her best to control her balance. Immediately after, she made her move. Two identical wind blades struck the center of the whirlwind. However, in the next second, Leng Ruoxue's wind blades were absorbed by the whirlwind. Seeing this, Leng Ruoxue knew that using wind-type divine power to deal with these whirlwinds would not be very effective. Then, fire, water, light, dark, earth, and all the other divine skills she had were thrown out by her. After the whirlwinds gently absorbed her divine skills, they disappeared. Instantly, Leng Ruoxue was dumbfounded. What was the meaning of this? Were those whirlwinds here for a meal? Thinking back to her earlier performance, no matter how Leng Ruoxue thought about it, she felt that she was just delivering food to those whirlwinds. However, it was a good thing that they had disappeared. Otherwise, he really did not know what to do with them. But just as Leng Ruoxue's mood was starting to relax, the yellow sand once again rushed towards her. This time, Leng Ruoxue really wanted to curse. However, the surging yellow sand did not give her the chance to curse. She was instantly drowned in it. As for Leng Ruoxue, she felt as though she was a lonely boat floating on the sea, drifting alone on the surface of the sea. What Leng Ruoxue's spirit was experiencing was a test from the origin of chaos. Some of them did not seem to cause any harm, but they were actually direct attacks on her spirit. However, Leng Ruoxue's spirit was extremely strong. Hence, she did not have much of a reaction to those soul attacks. On the other hand, she felt endless pain from those attacks on her body. This was enough to show that her body was still very weak. After a long time, the trial of the origin of chaos had finally ended. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue's spirit had returned to its previous stable state. However, her external body was suddenly enveloped by a cocoon of light. The evildoer who had been standing guard by Leng Ruoxue's side was elated when he saw this. The nervous expression on his face had also completely relaxed. Only the heavens knew how worried he was after everything that Shuer had just experienced. Especially when he saw the blood oozing out of Shuer's body, his heart felt as if it was being twisted by a knife. If he could, he really wanted to take Shue'er's place and bear all of this. Unfortunately, Shue'er could only bear this alone. Chapter 1964, You two are friends, too, but now that he saw this cocoon of light, he could finally put his heart at ease. This meant that the origin of chaos had acknowledged Shue'er as its master, and at this time, the origin of chaos was helping Shue'er transform her body. All he could do now was to wait patiently. I was right. Little Master will definitely succeed. Suddenly, a voice with a hint of laughter rang out in the quiet room. When the demon heard this voice, he immediately glared at the person who spoke. You still dare to say that? Do you know how dangerous it was just now? Don't I have you? Don't tell me you're going to watch as something happens to my little master. Huan Qin said. In fact, if it weren't for this demonic man, he wouldn't have dared to hand over the origin of chaos to his little master, but now it seemed that his decision was right. His little master's willpower was beyond anyone's reach. The evildoer was even angrier when he heard this. He could tell that this fellow had him in the palm of his hand. However, Huan Qin was right. He couldn't let anything happen to Shue'er. However, there was a limit to what he could do to help Shue'er. Shue'er had to rely on herself. Calm down, isn't it the end of the suffering and the end of the joy? With the assistance of the primal chaos source, Master's future training will be very fast. Huan Qin didn't want to be remembered by this demon, so he quickly calmed his anger. Otherwise, he wouldn't have a good life in the future. How's the baby? Glaring at Huan Qin, the demon asked about the baby's condition. That little guy. He was still trying hard to gnaw on Jingshi. You don't know. As it gnawed on those crystals, its face revealed a pained expression. Haha. That's so funny. Huan Qin laughed as he spoke. Clearly, he was treating this as a joke. Aren't you afraid I'll come after you? Hearing Huan Qin's gloating laughter, the demon indifferently warned. Ah. Of course I'm not. Huan Qin was taken aback for a moment before he spoke. In fact, he was really a little afraid. However, he couldn't say this out loud. Otherwise, this demonic man would definitely laugh at him. It's good that you're not afraid. The demon said with a faint smile. After he finished speaking, the evildoer focused his attention on Leng Ruoxue and ignored Huan Qin. Seeing this, Huan Qin could only leave the room. He didn't know that he had unintentionally offended two vengeful people. Therefore, he was destined to live a miserable life in the future. After Huan Qin left, he went to see the baby as usual and left enough crystals for it. Under the baby's resentful eyes, he strode out of the room. 3 days later. The light cocoon around Leng Ruoxue's body was completely absorbed by her, and she finally woke up. Leng Ruoxue was extremely surprised when she felt the abundant amount of divine power in her body. She had actually broken through. Furthermore, her breakthrough this time seemed very easy and calm. It was wrong. This advancement was very abnormal. Leng Ruo suddenly remembered that she was originally trying to break through the barrier to the next realm. However, she seemed to have been disturbed by a milky white ball that suddenly ran into her body. After that, she encountered a series of strange things. Following that, she felt as if she had returned to her mother's embrace. That gentle and soft feeling was simply too wonderful, so wonderful that she didn't want to wake up at all. Shue'er. Seeing that Leng Ruoxue was in a daze, the demon walked to her side and naturally pulled her into his arms as he called out softly. Freak. Leng Ruoxue had a stomach full of question marks, but she did not know who to ask. You've already refined the origin of chaos, so it's time to let you know some things. The demon said with a serious expression. What is it? Leng Ruoxue asked nervously. Also, what was the origin of chaos? Seeing the serious expression on the handsome face of the evildoer, she actually felt a little scared. It's about your master, and it's about me. The demon thought for a moment and looked at Leng Ruoxue worriedly. He did not know if Shue'er would be angry. Oh. Leng Ruoxue nodded. Her reaction to the evildoer's words was very calm. In reality, she didn't know how to react because she was very clear that the evildoer was hiding something from her. However, what did her master's matter have to do with the evildoer? This was something she didn't understand. That's your reaction? Hearing Leng Ruoxue's, "Oh," the demon was speechless. Shui Er's reaction was a little too much. It was not what he was thinking. What else? Leng Ruoxue asked with an evil smile. Actually, she also felt that she had been too calm, but she had no choice. Ever since she met her senior brother, she had guessed that someone would tell her about her master sooner or later. Therefore, she had already prepared herself mentally. It was just that she didn't expect that the person who mentioned her master to her would actually be a demon. "All right. I'm making a fuss," the demon said in a slightly aggrieved manner. He then called out to the void, "See Huanchen, Shuer has woken up. Hurry up and come out." "I'm coming." Just as evildoer finished speaking, Huanchen's snow-white figure appeared in the room. "Master! Huanchen missed you so much." After seeing Leng Ruoxue, Huanchen wanted to hug her again, but he was kicked away by the demon. "You're so rough." Huanchen, who dodged the evildoer's chain kick, said with a look of disdain. Then, he looked at Leng Ruoxue, then at the evildoer, and said with a smirk, "Evildoer, I actually quite admire you. You can still hold on to Master in her current state." At this moment, Leng Ruoxue was covered in dirt. The blood on her clothes had long dried up and had turned into a dark purple lump that had solidified on her clothes. Not only that, there were also some dark gray stains on her exposed skin. In short, the current Leng Ruoxue looked a little too horrible to look at. After hearing Huanchen's words, the demon didn't care at all. However, Leng Ruoxue lowered her head and looked at her own body. Then, she let out an ah and disappeared from her spot. "You did it on purpose." The demon calmly stated this fact. "So what if I am? I'm doing this for your benefit." Huanchen laughed, unafraid of death. "I will remember your good intentions today. I'll definitely repay you if I have the chance." The demon laughed nonchalantly. At this moment, there were no signs of anger in him. However, Huanchen knew very well that this fellow held a grudge. "There's no need to repay me." Huanchen's heart trembled. After which, he said with a mischievous smile, "I must repay you." The demon was very stubborn. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue reappeared in the room, refreshed. After washing up, she was in a very good mood. Furthermore, she was surprised to find that after her inexplicable breakthrough, her physical condition had improved. Her skin was also more moist and crystal clear. Although her skin used to be as tender as cream and could be broken by a breath, it now seemed to be more crystal clear and unbelievably tender. It was as if water would come out with a touch. At this moment, she was like a person carved out of the most perfect crystal, making people unable to take their eyes off her. Chapter 1965, Your Friends, 3, What Do You Want Me to Repay? Leng Ruoxue, who happened to hear these words when they returned to the room, asked curiously. "To repay his kindness, Shuer, let this guy tell you about your master." The evildoer said with a gentle smile. "Ah. You know my master?" Hearing the demon's words, Leng Ruoxue was even more curious. It seemed like there was more than one person who knew her master. "Of course I do." Huanchen's cheeky smile disappeared and he said seriously. "Then can you tell me?" Leng Ruoxue looked at Huanchen with anticipation. "Master, don't worry, I'll tell you." Huanchen promised. Then, he took out a transparent crystal from somewhere and handed it to Leng Ruoxue. Leng Ruoxue received the crystal with a face full of question marks. Then, she looked at illusion dust, not understanding what was going on. At this moment, the transparent crystal in Leng Ruoxue's hand suddenly burst out with a strong light. Following that, an illusionary figure appeared in front of the three of them with a smile. "Master!" Len Ruox's beautiful eyes were filled with tears as she stared at the not-so-solid figure and called out softly. That figure was none other than her incomparably handsome and noble master, you. Master, I finally have the chance to see you again. Huan Chen's eyes were filled with tears as he looked at you with excitement. Hearing Huan Chen's words, Len Ruoxua turned to look at him. Her heart was filled with question marks. She knew that the master that Huan Chen was referring to was definitely his previous master. However, wasn't his previous master the God Lord who had already fallen from the God world? Why did he call his master master? At this moment, Len Ruoxua had yet to make the connection between her master and the owner of fantasy dust. Hence, her beautiful face was filled with confusion. Am both your master and the previous owner of dream dust. You should be able to guess my identity by now. You smiled. The first time he saw Len Ruoxua, she was still a little child. Now that he saw her growing up, he was very pleased. You're a divine master. Len Ruoxua was a little dumbfounded. She had never thought that her master would be a divine master. Even though Qing Ju had always told her how powerful her master was, she had never thought of it in that way. Yes, but I've already fallen. The me you see now is just a trace of consciousness I left behind. You said with a faint smile. He then continued, you've already refined the origin of chaos. From now on, the divine world is in your hands. I don't want to. The divine realm is Master S, don't even think about escaping responsibility, I won't carry this huge burden for you. When Len Ruoxua heard her master's words, she immediately objected vehemently. Even though she wasn't sure what the origin of chaos was and what it had to do with the God world, she didn't want to accept her master's words, even though the truth was that her master had already passed away. But she just didn't want to accept it. Silly girl. Since you became my disciple and the master of the universal bracelet, everything was already destined. Moreover, you are the master recognized by the origin of chaos, so everything in the divine world is naturally related to you. You can't get rid of it. You sighed. The one who wants to get rid of all this is master, not me. Len Ruoxua said, a little upset. As long as she thought about how her master was here to say his last words, her heart would feel as if it was being cut by a knife. Although she had not spent much time with this cheap master, her master had loved her like a daughter. So, she was not willing to see her master disappear forever. Silly girl, master has already fallen long ago. Of master's 3 disciples, only you have the chaotic body, so master can only place this heavy burden on you. I hope you don't disappoint master. You said in a heavy tone. Master. Hearing her master say this, Len Ruoxua didn't know how to rebut. More importantly, she was afraid that her master would be sad, but she didn't want her master to disappear forever. Little girl, you won't let master down, right? You saw Len Ruox's dilemma and pressed on while the iron was hot. Of course, I don't want to disappoint master. However, the divine world already has a divine master. Thus, I don't need to worry about it. Right now, I only want to know how to save master. Len Ruoxua said after some thought. As far as she knew, the current divine master of the divine world was her master's younger sister. Therefore, she couldn't understand why her master would say such things since the divine world was managed by someone. Could it be that they were siblings who didn't get along? Len Ruoxua made wild guesses. In reality, she could tell a thing or two from Huan Chen's attitude towards the divine master. However, at that time, she had not known that her master was the previous divine master of the divine world, so she naturally did not care about her master's feelings and could make wild guesses. But now, she did not want to think that way. Len Ruox's words made Yes' heart soften. He then said, only those who have been acknowledged by the origin of chaos and possess the universal bracelet can become the true master of the divine world. Wu Ling doesn't have the chaotic body, so she can't become the true master of the divine world. Only you are qualified. But, Len Ruoxua was a little hesitant. Actually, she wanted to ask, the current god master of the god world is your sister. If I accept master's dying wish, wouldn't I become that woman's enemy? Although the two of them already had some conflicts, it was not to the point where they would fight to the death. More importantly, if she didn't know the relationship between that woman and her master, she wouldn't have any pressure dealing with her. But now, she was a little conflicted. Schwer, you don't have to worry about the Miwu miasma. She's not the rightful divine master, and the rules of heaven and earth won't acknowledge her. Furthermore, you could see the doubt in Leng Ruoxu's heart and explained. However, he did not finish his sentence. As for the other things, he would let others tell Schwer. He found it hard to say. The timing he had arranged had not really come. In fact, he had appeared a little too early. Seeing that her master seemed to be hiding something, Leng Ruoxue was understanding and did not continue the topic. She changed the topic and said, Master, is there any way to save you? Tell me. There is no other way. Schwer, Master's soul has already dispersed and disappeared from this world a long time ago. However, Master is quite gratified to see your growth now. The only pity is that Master won't be able to see you become a true expert, but Master believes that you won't let Master down. Master will give you his blessings. You said with a smile. Then, he turned to look at the evildoer and said, You have to treat my disciple well. You're not allowed to bully her. Humph. I don't need you to say that. The demon said in a bad mood when he heard yes words. Of course I have to say it. Im Schwer's master. However, now that you've become my disciple's man, shouldn't you also call me master? Come, let's hear you call me master. You laughed evilly, his face full of pride after taking advantage of her. Keep daydreaming. The demon rolled his eyes and said in an angry tone. When Leng Ruoxue saw this, she widened her eyes in disbelief. What was going on? Did she hear it wrong? Master seemed to be taking advantage of the demon. At this moment, even if she was slow to react, she could tell that the two of them were old acquaintances. However, now was not the time to ask about this. Yuiran's smile was gentle when he heard the demon's words. However, he turned to Leng Ruoxue and said, Schwer. This guy is too disrespectful to your master. Why don't we change to another one? There were so many good men. Let's have another good fight. Ah. Her master's words made Leng Ruoxue break out in cold sweat. She thought to herself, Master, you're so bold. You dare to say this, but I don't dare to be your disciple. If she dared to have such a thought, the demon would definitely kill her. Of course, he wasn't going to kill her. Therefore, for the safety of all the men in the world, she must be firm in her heart. In this life, in the next life, in all lives, she would not want anyone else except for the evildoer. And, Master. Other than leaving your last words, shouldn't you also answer your doubts? To this day, she still did not know what the origin of chaos was. There were still many things that her master did not explain clearly, so she was still confused. However, the evildoer's sinister gaze made Leng Ruoxue swallow all her questions. She would ask Huan Chen when she had the chance. Since his master was his previous master, he must know everything about his master. Qing Ju should know as well, even though he had not fully recovered his memory. And now, the air pressure in the room was extremely low. The cold wind was blowing, causing Leng Ruoxue to involuntarily distance herself from the center of the storm. Retreating with her was the equally frightened Huan Chen. Leng Ruoxue did not know how to describe the scene as she looked at the demon and her master who were in a confrontation. Even though her master was just a strand of consciousness, the pressure from her master was still very strong. What was even rarer was that the demon's aura was not any weaker than her master's. At this moment, she was curious about the demon's identity. However, no one was willing to answer her question now. Just like that, evildoer and Imperial exchanged glances with each other. The crackling of electricity seemed to flash between the two of them, neither of them was willing to admit defeat first. After a long time, the two of them suddenly looked at each other and smiled. Then, They hugged each other. Ah! This dramatic scene made Leng Ruoxue dumbfounded once again. What was going on? Leng Ruoxue felt that this was the sentence that she had been saying the most in her heart today. You guys are friends? Leng Ruoxue held it in and finally asked the question in her heart. Chapter 1966, The Identity of a Monster, 1, Who's Friends with Him? Upon hearing this, the two of them who were originally hugging each other immediately jumped away reflexively. The evildoer even said directly without holding back. Yes, we are not friends, we are enemies. You said with a smile. Ah. The relationship between you two is really strange. Their conversation left Leng Ruoxue at a loss for words. Enemy? Did they look like one? He didn't see it anyway. It's not strange at all, we just hate each other. The evildoer said hurriedly. Then, he walked to Leng Ruoxue's side and pulled her into his arms. He hugged her tightly as if he was afraid that someone would snatch her away. Leng Ruoxue didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the evildoer's childish behavior. Yes, eyes were wide open. Was this the guy he knew? His disciple was still the most charming. Yu couldn't help but think to himself. At the thought of this, Yu smiled at Leng Ruoxue and said, Shuer, come to Master, Master has a few secrets to tell you. What? Leng Ruoxue looked at Yu in surprise, then at the displeased evildoer. She did not make a move immediately. When Yu saw this, he was greatly disappointed and shouted exaggeratedly, It's really true that a grown woman can't be kept at home. His master's words were not as useful as a look from this brat. I'm sad. Stop acting. Shuer, you go. That guy's mouth can't spit out ivory, you can just listen. You don't have to take it to heart. The evildoer retaliated. Then, he unwillingly let go of Leng Ruoxue's hand. Leng Ruoxue looked at the evildoer and smiled. Then, she walked to Yu and asked, Master, what do you have to tell me? Shuer. I didn't expect you to be taken so soon. I originally wanted to keep the good stuff in the field of others. But now, it seems that we can't keep him here. Yu looked at Leng Ruoxue and sighed. When Leng Ruoxue heard this, her forehead was filled with black lines. She said, Master, is this the secret you wanted to tell me? Of course not, I just said it out of my own feelings. Shuer, I know that you're under a lot of pressure when I hand the divine realm over to you. However, I can't find anyone else more suitable than you. So, please forgive my selfishness. As for Wu Jing, if she... You don't have to worry too much about her, just do what you need to do. No matter what you do, I will always support you. And that guy, he will definitely help you. With him by your side, Master will be more assured. Although we have been at odds with each other since the day I met him, Master knows that he is the person most worthy of Master's trust. However, you can't tell him this, otherwise, he will be proud. Yu continued. Shuer, Master is very happy to see your cultivation. Master is also very proud to have such an excellent disciple like you. Originally, I wanted to tell you more things, but there are some things that I can't say in front of you. The two of them will tell you everything. You still couldn't say it. As for my other two disciples and those subordinates who were once loyal to me, if you have the chance, you must find a way to contact them. In fact, I know very well that after my death, their days will definitely not be good. Shuer, I'll leave everything to you. I'm a useless master and a lousy divine master. I hope you can do better than Master. Master will bless you forever. Yu Yan continued to speak with his senses, his clear black eyes welling up with tears. However, he resisted the urge to let the water fall. Master, I've already seen eldest senior brother, but there's still no news of second senior brother. Eldest senior brother has already gone to look for him. When Leng Ruoxue heard this, she hurriedly said. That's good. That's good. Yu Yan said. In truth, he felt a lot of guilt towards his own disciples and subordinates. Unfortunately, he couldn't help them at all right now. He could only count on Shuai. Although this was a little irresponsible, he had no other choice. Shuai, it's about time. Master should leave. You finally said after staring at Shuai for a long time. Master. When Len Ruoxue heard Yes' words, tears immediately welled up in her beautiful eyes. She had heard these familiar words a few years ago, but now, she was going to experience the life and death separation with her master again. Her heart was in extreme pain. Soon after, Len Ruoxue watched as Yes' figure slowly disappeared from the three of them. After you had completely disappeared, tears began to stream down her face. Shuai, don't be sad. He died many years ago, and what you're seeing now is just a wisp of his consciousness left behind. It can't be considered him. The evildoer pulled Len Ruoxue into his embrace and consoled her with heartache. However, in his heart, he could not help but curse her to death. Damn bastard, making Shuai sad again. Humph. If that guy hadn't disappeared long ago, he definitely wouldn't have let that annoying man go. I know. Len Ruoxue stopped her tears and sobbed. Then, she turned to Huan Chen and asked, Huan Chen, you should know what happened back then. When Huan Chen heard Len Ruoxue's words, he glanced at the evildoer before nodding his head, However, I only know a part of it. As for what the old master has planned, I'm not very sure. Then tell me what you know first. Len Ruoxue ordered. All right. It all started from hundreds of thousands of years ago. At that time, the divine world was extremely beautiful and the spiritual qi was abundant. It was incomparable to what it was now. Moreover, although the human race and the beast race were not very harmonious at that time, the relationship between the two races was definitely much stronger than it was now. Unfortunately, later on, the old master's younger sister, Wu Yan, became ambitious and wanted to replace the old master. Therefore, she contacted many traitors among the old master's subordinates and set up a plan tens of thousands of years later. Finally, they took advantage of the old master's seclusion to launch a rebellion. In the end, the old master fell at their hands. Huan Chen said with a sorrowful expression. Isn't master a divine master? How could he have died so easily? And where were master's subordinates and two senior brothers at that time? Could it be that they are just going to watch as something happens to master? From Huan Chen's words, Len Ruoxue could tell that there were many loopholes. Hence, she could not help but ask. The old master was injured at that time and had been in seclusion the entire time. As for his two disciples and subordinates, they were all defeated one by one, so they had no way of rescuing the old master. In that turmoil hundreds of thousands of years ago, many humans and magical beasts betrayed the human race, and almost all of those races had a secret relationship with the old master. After that, the subordinates who were loyal to the old master either died or were sealed. In short, it was a tragic event. Huan Chen said as he recalled. A pained expression gradually appeared on his face. Chapter 1967, The Identity of a Monster, 2. How did Master get injured? Could it be that Master didn't have any premonition before the rebellion? Len Ruoxue continued to ask. Her master was a god master, and everything in the god world should be within her control. How could such a thing happen? She really could not understand. The old master was injured because, Huan Chen glanced at the demon and did not continue. At this moment, the demon continued, that guy was injured because we had a competition just now. At that time, we were all injured and in seclusion. However, when I found out about this, the dust had already settled in the divine world. That woman also calls herself the master of the divine realm. However, with our injuries at the time, dealing with a few rebellions was not a problem at all. And the reason why we would. It was all because of that damned woman. Then, the demon gritted his teeth and said. After hearing the demon's words, Dream Dust fell silent. What's going on? Can't you guys explain it clearly? Len Ruoxue asked anxiously as she felt that something was amiss. The reason why the mist ripple was successful was because the old master treated her as his own sister. After a long while, Huan Qin said, "Ah. What was the meaning of this? Could it be that Wu Xian isn't master's biological younger sister?" Leng Ruoxue was confused. "Of course not. That woman is a thief. How could she be Ye's sister?" The demon said hurriedly. "Can you make yourselves clear?" Leng Ruoxue was very anxious. Why did it take so much effort for these two men to talk? Shuai, before the creation of the heaven and earth, the world was in chaos. You and I were both born from chaos. However, we were born from different sources of chaos. The source of chaos that gave birth to me contained the element of darkness. Therefore, my body was mainly filled with dark energy. As for you, the source of chaos that gave birth to him was mainly filled with the element of light. He is the master of the divine realm, while I am the master of the 9 nether prison. The world calls me the Dark Lord. He was in charge of the living, while I was in charge of the souls. As such, although our identities seemed to be opposing, we were inseparable. However, in the eyes of the world, we were enemies. But in reality, we really can't be considered, and we're not friends. The demon finally opened his mouth to explain. This was also the first time he had revealed his identity to Shuai. When Leng Ruoxue heard this, she widened her eyes as he had wished. Her beautiful face was filled with disbelief. The evildoer's identity was too unexpected. Leng Ruoxue couldn't help but sigh. Originally, she had guessed that the evildoer might be master's subordinate. Moreover, she was both a friend and a master. Now that he thought about it, it was a good thing she didn't say her guess. Otherwise, the demon would be furious. What was even more unexpected to her was that the origin of chaos was actually the mother of the evildoers and her master. No wonder they regarded the origin of chaos as so important. Seeing Leng Ruoxue's shock, the demon continued, "Although we never acknowledged each other as our friends, at that time, the person we trusted the most was her. As for that woman, you did love her a lot and treated her as his only family, but unfortunately, that woman was an ingrate. When she was pregnant, she stole that idiot Yes energy. In the end, you died in the hands of that woman. You're really not just stupid." When the evildoer said this, his face was filled with an expression of gritting his teeth. However, Leng Ruoxue clearly didn't understand the demon's words. What did he mean by stealing master's energy? Could energy be stolen? Seeing Leng Ruoxue's confusion, the demon continued to explain, "Shuai, although that idiot and I are both born from chaos, we are independent and opposing individuals. Therefore, we can only live in two different worlds. When I was just born, I was cold and liked to be alone. I didn't care if there was anyone by my side. That guy couldn't stand loneliness. At that time, a seed from nowhere took root beside you and stole his energy to grow. You should have killed the seed, but he was too soft-hearted and left this disaster behind. That seed is the current Wu Yan, so the two of them call each other brother and sister. However, that idiot regarded Wu Yan as her only family member, but Wu Yan only thought that you was her biggest obstacle to her domination of the divine world. After many years of planning, she finally succeeded. Actually, I've warned him many times to be careful of that woman, Wu Yan. Unfortunately, he turned a deaf ear to all of it and died in the hands of that woman in the end." The demon's face was filled with an expression of disappointment. The old master is just too sentimental. When Huan Qin heard the evildoer's words, he couldn't help but defend you. Although he sometimes hated that woman for not knowing what was good for her, he never thought that this was his master's fault. My ass. That woman was a thief. To be so devoted to a thief who had stolen her things was not foolish, but stupid. Otherwise, how could he have died in the hands of that woman? If he had hardened his heart and killed that woman earlier, how could all this have happened? Huan Chen's words caused a huge reaction from the demon. He had been holding back for many years because of this, but he had never had the chance to vent. Shuai, there's one more thing that I have to let you know. In fact, after the rebellion, that idiot had a chance to kill the thief. Although he was injured at the time, it was not a problem for him to deal with that woman. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it, so he died in the hands of that woman. The reason why he didn't dare to tell you these things just now wasn't because he didn't want to, but because he was too embarrassed to say it. However, even though he couldn't bear to kill that woman, he gave this mission to you. The demon said angrily. The old master is just too sentimental. Huan Chen explained in a low voice. Yup. He valued relationships, he valued that bitch's relationship, he treated that thief as his own family, but in the end, he caused his own disciple and subordinates to be played in the palm of that woman's hand, their life and death unknown. Is this what you call being sentimental? Huan Chen's words caused the demon to roar at the top of his lungs. When Len Ruoxue saw how agitated the evildoer was, she didn't know how to console him. She knew very well that the evildoer was infuriated by her master's avoidance. Although she was a little angry with her master after hearing this, she was still her master after all. She really couldn't say anything. After Huan Chen heard this, he fell silent. Although the old master had done something wrong in some areas, after the incident, he had done his best to arrange a way out for his disciples and subordinates. As a result, the old master's old subordinates who had fallen into the hands of the fog ripple were not many, and those people were all quite stubborn, those who wanted to die with the old master. Chapter 1968, The Identity of a Monster, 3, If there were any, they would be sealed beasts. Seeing that the atmosphere had suddenly turned heavy, Len Ruoxue could only take the initiative to ask, "Freak, then why are you on the Edge-Wind continent?" Actually, what she wanted to ask was, why did the evildoer appear by her side? Was this also Master's arrangement? I was entrusted by that idiot to protect his future disciple. Although that idiot was a good person, he had given up everything to pry into the secrets of heaven after the incident. He knew that this was a great calamity that was unavoidable. At the same time, he knew that the future of the divine world would depend on his unborn disciple. Therefore, he came to the netherworld realm with a wisp of his consciousness and begged me to protect his disciple. What's more, he only told me that his disciple would be born in the Leng family of the Caltrop continent, but he didn't tell me which generation it would be. Thus, I could only reincarnate again and again, just to find his disciple who had yet to be born. At this point, his devilishly handsome face couldn't help but reveal a bitter expression. In order to find Shuer, he had really spent a lot of time and effort. Fortunately, he had finally found her. Ah! Reincarnated again and again. Then how many reincarnations have you reincarnated? Len Ruoxue was speechless. Wasn't this the mistress of the dark world? He was in charge of the world's powerful soul, so why did he need to reincarnate continuously to find someone? I can't remember. When I first met your ancestor, he was just a little kid in open-crotch pants. After that, I gave the universal bracelet to him and had him pass it on from generation to generation. However, after so many years, there was still no one in the Leng family who had the chaotic body and could make the universal bracelet recognize him as its master. Thus, I could only continue to reincarnate and look for him. The demon smiled faintly. Ah! You've worked hard. After hearing the demon's words, Len Ruoxue's forehead was covered with cold sweat. She didn't expect the demon to have seen the Leng family's ancestor in open-crotch pants. No wonder he always smiled so strangely when he saw the ancestor. It's not hard at all. It's worth it to be able to find the woman I love. The demon said with a proud smile. But there's something I don't understand. You're not the mistress of the dark world, so why do you have to reincarnate again and again to find someone? His devilish and sensitive words made Len Ruoxue feel a little embarrassed. Her beautiful face flushed red, so she had no choice but to change the topic. I can't go to the lower realms as I please. The laws of heaven and earth are afraid that the lower realms won't be able to withstand my dark power and will be destroyed, so they restrict my freedom. I can only use the method of reincarnation. The demon said. Then, his expression suddenly changed and he started complaining, Shuer, the heavens are really unfair. Why does that idiot have the right to go wherever he wants? And I can only stay in the 9 nether prison. If he wanted to go to other places to play, not only were there many restrictions, but he couldn't enjoy himself to his heart's content. That damn law of heaven and earth is even staring at me as if it's afraid that it'll destroy the whole world. In fact, I'm not that violent. Tell me, isn't the heavens being unfair to me? The demon's clear black eyes were like a puppy's as he stared at Leng Ruoxue with anticipation. Yes, the heavens are so unfair to you. How can you be so right? You're too much. When Leng Ruoxue saw his demonic and adorable expression, she immediately felt indignant. It is. In order to find you, I've suffered a lot. So, you have to compensate me. You're only allowed to love me in the future. The demon took the opportunity to raise his conditions, and a hint of slyness quickly flashed in the depths of his eyes. Ah. You're the only one I've ever loved. Leng Ruoxue said helplessly. Then, she asked curiously, since you're the mistress of the dark world, why would a marquis of the Ling Wind continent be bullied by the Yi family? I didn't have my original memory when I was born. Later, Mu Li found me and I recovered my memory. From then on, I was the one who bullied them. The demon said honestly. So that's how it is. You've really suffered. The evildoer's words made Leng Ruoxue's heart ache. Even though the evildoer did not tell her in detail about the circumstances of each reincarnation, she was very clear that those were definitely not good memories. All of this was for her. So, you have to compensate me well. Schwer, did you know? When I first saw you on the prismatic wind continent, I couldn't take my eyes off you. At that time, I had already recovered all my memories, so I was in disbelief. Although I don't really like women, I've seen many beautiful women, but none of them could move my heart. But the first time I saw you, I knew I wanted you. Later on, I found out that you were the owner of the universal bracelet and the person I was looking for. My thoughts became even stronger. I even thought that this might be the main reason why that idiot asked me to protect you. Now that I think about it, it seems very possible. The demon guessed. After all, that guy had peeked into the heavenly secret. However, now that he knew that everything might be within that idiot's calculations, he could only willingly jump into the well. First time seeing me. Was it when we were in the psychedelic forest? When Leng Ruoxue heard the evildoer's words, she suddenly wanted to know when the evildoer had fallen for her. Perhaps, this was something every woman wanted to know. No. Even earlier than that. The demon suddenly said in a mysterious tone. Ah. How come I didn't know about it? Leng Ruoxue's face was filled with question marks. She remembered very clearly that the psychedelic forest was the first time she had met the demon. At that time, we didn't really meet, and I only caught a glimpse of you. The evildoer said with a smile. His thoughts couldn't help but go back to that moment. At that time, Schwer was like a curious baby. She was very curious about everything in the Big Dipper Wind continent, and his eyes couldn't help but follow her. Then, when exactly is it? Leng Ruoxue was very stubborn and wanted to ask for the exact time. Do you still remember the first time you left the general's mansion, went for a walk on the street, and bought a baby back? At that time, I was in a private room of a restaurant and happened to see you. The demon laughed, his eyes filled with deep affection. Hearing the demon's words, Leng Ruoxue finally remembered. No wonder she felt that someone was watching her in the dark. Now, it seemed like it was the demon. Freak. Although you were initially entrusted by Master to look for me with such difficulty, I still have to thank you. Thank you for everything you've done for me. After thinking about it, Leng Ruoxue started to get emotional. Silly girl, even though I'm being entrusted by someone, if the person I'm looking for isn't you, I won't be by that person's side all day long. At most, when he's in danger, it'll help him and ensure that he grows up safely. So, everything I'm doing now is of my own free will. It has nothing to do with other people's trust. I hope you can understand. The demon said very seriously. He didn't want Shuai to think that he was only good to her because of her stupid master. I understand. Len Ruoxue laughed as she took the initiative to hug the demon. Now that she knew the identity of the demon and knew about her master, she felt that she had to work harder in her cultivation and strive to avenge her master as soon as possible. Although her master could let go of her sister, who she regarded as family, she would not allow anyone to live well after betraying her master. Therefore, she would never let that woman go. In fact, she was very clear that if that woman knew her identity and that she had the cosmic bangle and the origin of chaos, she would never let her go. Therefore, the most important thing for her now was to improve her strength and cultivate her own force. After all, that woman was now a divine master and had been in the divine world for many years. Her power was unfathomable. So, Len Ruoxue knew that if she wanted to deal with that woman, she still had a lot to work on. She had already met her two senior brothers, Bing Yao. As long as the other one was still alive, she would definitely find him. As for her master's former subordinates, she could only decide based on the situation. After all, she did not know much about those people's situation. However, as long as they did not betray her master, she would definitely not treat them badly. At the thought of this, Len Ruoxue once again turned her gaze to Huan Chen. As an artifact spirit that had always followed by her master's side, Huan Chen's understanding of her master's subordinates was definitely much better than hers and the demoness. Hence, he was the most suitable person to ask. Dream Dust. Tell me about master's subordinates. I want to know more about their situation. Len Ruoxue asked with a smile. All right. Seeing that his little master had finally thought of him, Huan Chen was very pleased. When he saw her being so sweet with the devilish man, he thought that he would be forgotten. In fact, he was a little dissatisfied that the two of them had changed the topic as they talked. However, he was relieved to see that his little master was not charmed by the beauty. Then, Huan Chen seemed to have returned to the peaceful and beautiful divine realm hundreds of thousands of years ago. He slowly recalled, when the old master was the master of the divine master, he had many followers. Whether it was the human race or the beast race, there were many experts who were loyal to him. At that time, the beast god was the leader of the beast race, and most of the beast races, including the four king divine beast races, were loyal to the old master. Chapter 1969, You'll Get Used to It. 1. However, not all of the beasts are loyal. Some of them have been bribed by the mist to become her lackeys. It's precisely because they're disloyal that many beasts are caught off guard and fall for their tricks. Those magical beasts who were loyal to the old master have either died or been sealed. The current magical beasts are not as powerful as before. However, the strange thing is that many of the rebellious beasts are not completely under the control of the fog. Sometimes, the fog can't even command them. I don't know what's going on. As he spoke, Huan Chen also felt strange. Isn't that obvious? The betraying beasts were ambitious. They would betray their own race for power and status, and Fog Ripple's power was obtained through improper means. They would naturally not be convinced by Fog Ripple, so they should only be in a cooperative relationship. And not a subordinate. Len Ruoxue said after hearing Huan Chen's words. Shuai's guess is right. No one is willing to be under someone else's control. The Rai mice can't suppress them at all. After all, they all know that the Rai mice can't really control the divine world. Naturally, there's no need for them to listen to that woman's words. However, on the surface, they seem to have a close relationship. However, as far as I know, there seem to be some disharmonious voices among the beast clans, especially the four great king divine beast clans that used to be quite close. You should have seen it at the last elite gathering. They don't even care about each other, so their relationship has obviously deteriorated. The demon laughed. Well, I just don't know how far their relationship has gone. Len Ruoxue was curious as well. Previously, she had wanted to get closer to the Qilin clan. However, there wasn't a suitable opportunity to do so, so she just let it be. Now, it seemed that if there was really a conflict between these beasts, she could make good use of it. There's no rush in the matter of the beast race. It's not easy for fog to make them truly useful to us. The most important thing now is to find out the whereabouts of those stupid subordinates and what they are thinking now. The demon said after thinking for a while. Some of the old master's subordinates are still in the hands of the fog. I'm not very clear about the whereabouts of the others. However, there are definitely people from the fog in the 8 great divine regions. Therefore, shouldn't we eliminate the claws and fangs of the fog first? Huan Chen suggested. There's no hurry to kill those dogs. I'm quite curious that you don't know the whereabouts of that stupid subordinate. Hearing Huan Chen's words, the evildoer asked in surprise. He thought that the idiot would explain his funeral. He didn't expect that Huan Chen, the artifact spirit who had always followed that idiot, also had many things he didn't know. I don't know. Huan Chen said with certainty. He only knew that a portion of the people were in the hands of the mist. As for the whereabouts of those who had escaped, the old master had not told him. It was probably to protect those people. In reality, you had indeed made arrangements for the whereabouts of most of his subordinates. However, it wasn't the time for them to meet Shuai. He shouldn't have appeared at this time, but he didn't expect Huan Chen to meet Shuai and recognize her as his master so early. Hence, his arrangements were disrupted. Originally, he had already sealed everything that happened in the past in the heaven-defying incantation. As long as Shuai cultivated to the 9th level of the heaven-defying incantation, she would know everything. According to his plan, the elite competition would be about to begin by then. Huan Chen would naturally meet Shuai and recognize her as his master. By then, Shuai's strength should have been almost at Reverend God level. After knowing everything, Shuai would be able to do more with less effort. He had also planned to show up at that time, but he did not expect the elite competition to be brought forward. Huan Chen and Shuai had met earlier, and he had also appeared in front of Shuai earlier. At this moment, Shuai did not know everything. He could not say it in front of her, so he kept his mouth shut. He knew that even if he did not say anything, Huan Chen and the demon would tell her something. More importantly, Shuai would know more details when she reached the 9th level of the heaven-defying art. However, he would probably not have the chance to appear again at that time. As for whether his former subordinates would be as loyal to him as they were to him, it would depend on Shuai's ability. After all, he had promised his subordinates that he would not force them to do anything. Naturally, he would not force them to acknowledge Shuai as their master. However, he had no intention of telling Leng Ruoxue about these things. This could be considered a test for his own disciple. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue naturally didn't know that when her master gave her the opportunity to contact his former subordinates, he had left her with a difficult problem. However, even if she knew, she wouldn't have much of a reaction. After all, if she was in her master's position, she would probably consider the same thing. One must know that if she didn't have any ability, even if her master had made arrangements for her, she would not be able to avenge her master. More importantly, she wasn't someone who only knew how to get what she wanted. Therefore, no matter what she did, she liked to achieve her goals with her own efforts. Avenging his master was no exception. What about the Dark Knight race? Leng Ruoxue thought for a moment before suddenly asking. They can't be considered old master's subordinates. In the past, the Dark Knight race was famous for their arrogance in the divine world. They didn't want to recognize anyone as their master, even if the other party was the divine master. However, their race had a close relationship with their old master and had received his grace before. Thus, they respected him very much, but they didn't truly recognize him as their master. Fog Ripple had also thought of targeting them. After all, the battle strength of the Dark Knight race was obvious to all in the immortal realm. But how could the Dark Knight race take a fancy to Wu Cheng? Those guys have very high standards. Huan Chen said with a hint of gloating. So, most of the Knight race has been sealed. Even though she had never asked Yu, she could guess that the seal on the Knight race had something to do with fog. Well, it's not strange that they were sealed. Fog Eyes has taken extreme measures against people or beasts who are not used by it. This is also her usual method. Huan Chen said. Leng Ruoxua nodded slightly and didn't continue on this topic. After all, it was a little too early to talk about this. Huan Chen wasn't too sure about the whereabouts of her master's subordinates. Furthermore, she couldn't do everything in one go. If she wanted to avenge her master, she had to consider her own strength. The most important thing now was to work hard to improve her strength and cultivate her own forces. Of course, allies were also very important.